is a Cable 14 special presentation.
The City of Hamilton is situated upon the traditional territories of the Erie, Neutral, Huron-Wendat, Haudenosaunee, and Mississaugas. This land is covered by the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Belt Covenant, which was an agreement between the Haudenosaunee and the Anishinaabe to share and care for the resources around the Great Lakes. We further acknowledge that this land is covered by the Between the Lakes Purchase in 1792 between the Crown and the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. Today, the City of Hamilton is home to many Indigenous people from across Turtle Island, known as North America. And we recognize that we must do more to learn about the rich history of this land so that we can better understand our roles as residents, neighbors, partners, and caretakers.
Hello and welcome to Our Hamilton, Our Vote, the 2022 municipal election debates presented live by Cable 14 in partnership with our good friends at the Hamilton Spectator. I'm Mike Fortune and I will be your moderator. For the next 90 minutes, we have invited the candidates for councillor in Ward 5 to join us. With us here in studio today are Krista Boyer, Matt Francis, Stan Habza, Bob Hurst, Ryan Ladner, Linda Lukasik, Angela Pugliese, and George Rusich. Thank you all very much for being here tonight. Now, there are three other candidates in this ward. Candidate Sebastian Alday did not communicate with us. Kevin Geenan withdrew from the debate earlier this afternoon, and while he wanted to be here, Mr. Gordon Noble, he is ill. We wish him a speedy recovery. Our debate format includes 2 minutes each for the candidates to introduce themselves. Then, our local media panel will be posing questions. Viewers at home, well, if you're watching our live broadcast, please send us a tweet at Cable 14 or email election@cable14.com to share anything that you would like to ask our candidates. And finally, we will wrap up with an open forum for the candidates to question and respond to each other. All candidates, they were provided with copies of the debate format well in advance, so they are aware of how this evening will unfold. As usual, I will be doing my best to keep us on track with what's expected for each section and how we are doing for time. So, with that said, let's get started with our 2-minute introductory statements. If needed, you'll get a 10-second warning before I call time. Up first, candidate Krista Boyer.
First, I'd like to thank Cable 14 for hosting, Mike Fortune for facilitating, our distinguished news representatives for attending, my fellow candidates for being here, and our viewers at home for taking the time to participate in the election. My name is Krista Boyer, B-O-Y-E-R. I'm a resident of Stony Creek and live with my fiance, Hamilton and Dofasco firefighter. I'm looking forward to the opportunity to discuss the issues which concern you most and our hopes and plans for the future. I decided to run for office after 20 years of community service where I felt I needed to further invest in my community. In my 20 years of community service, I have advocated for businesses and have held positions on city and not-for-profit boards, including Young Entrepreneurs and Professionals, Realtors Association of Hamilton Burlington, Inwell, Hamilton Police, Stony Creek Legion, Clean City Liaison Committee, Hamilton Future Fund, and I said Stony Creek Legion. My experience with these organizations has provided great insight and a wealth of knowledge which translates into what is needed to be a city councillor. My vision for Ward 5 includes a safe, clean, and beautiful community, reliable transit with options, community housing plan, a community and cultural events, and transparency and honesty. In order to realize this vision, I plan to continue my engagement with the community because I want to hear from you what your needs are. As councillor, my door will always be open for you. I have to thank my amazing team of volunteers who have helped me in my campaign and are helping me realize the vision I have for Ward 5. We are always looking for passionate individuals to join our team. You can always reach out to us on our website or visit us at our office in downtown Stony Creek. My name again is Krista Boyer. I'm not here for a job. I'm here to get a job done. Thank you for your time.
Candidate Boyer, thank you very much for that. We will now move on to candidate Matt Francis for your 2-minute opening statement.
Thank you, Cable 14, for giving us the opportunity to debate the future of our great city of Hamilton in Ward 5. My name is Matt Francis, and I am a lifelong Ward 5 resident. I am a husband, a family man, a father of 2 beautiful kids, and a homeowner in the Green Hill Avenue area. I am running because I care deeply about our community. I care deeply about the future of our community, and I love our community. The people here are my friends, my family, and my neighbors. I have the necessary understanding of the complex workings of our local government as a former City Hall employee. I have been committed to our community with grassroots initiatives that have achieved results for our community, including Save Our Pier, which gathered thousands of signatures on a petition which ultimately led to revitalization of our great community asset. I have worked with our downtown Stony Creek community to prevent paid parking and to save our battlefield reenactment. Through our work, this event is now back on the table, and we will make our culturally significant event a success in 2023. The success of our community initiatives is leading to economic prosperity for our beautiful ward, from downtown Stony Creek to Beach Boulevard, where I was raised. I will always stand up and achieve results for our community. I will continue this hard work and dedication as your Ward 5 councillor. We will see these projects through while keeping our taxes low, making our streets safer, and moving Hamilton forward. I have been to thousands of doors listening to your concerns. This election is about you and putting your needs first, which I will continue to do on your behalf. I am fully committed to our community, and I am available 24/7 and can be reached at 905-519-6728 or voteformatt.ca. On October 24th, vote for Matt Francis to continue uniting our community to achieve the community that you want for the issues that matter. Thank you.
Candidate Francis, thank you very much for that. We will now continue on. Stan Habza, please take it away.
Good evening, everyone. Thanks for allowing us to voice our opinions and get on with things. And Mike, appreciate Cable 14 for holding this. I'd just like to say to the people in Ward 5, hello, bonjour, bueno, ciao, hola, and namaste. My name is Stan Habza, and I've been a long-time resident of the east end of the city, but now we reside on Wardrope Avenue in Ward 5. Okay? I'm married to a beautiful woman of independent means, and she has given us 3 beautiful children who have given us 7 beautiful little blessings in our lives. My past in that, I'm a retired pollution abatement officer for the defunct region of Hamilton-Wentworth. Been involved with all levels of government due to the nature of my job. I have basically in that represented people in that whenever I've been employed or not even employed, retired. The situation with the pollution abatement officer's position was I had to enforce the sewer use bylaw and got into protecting the environment and the people themselves of the city of Hamilton. I pride myself now and then in helping the taxpayers, which I have done in the past and will do in the future. Okay? My concerns are this: we have to build the trust back into this council that has escaped it. My position as a pollution abatement officer in that was always to be accountable, honest, hardworking, trustworthy, transparent, and results-oriented. And I stand by those commitments now, and I'll stand by those commitments in the future.
Candidate Hasbett, thank you very much. We do have to continue to move on, though. Candidate Hasbett, sorry. Thank you very much for that. We will now continue on with candidate Bob Hurst. Please take it away.
Thank you, Mike, and thank you, Cable 14. And most of all, thank you to the citizens and residents of Hamilton that are paying attention to these debates. I know that many outside of Ward 5 are also watching these, as many of us are watching the other debates, and I appreciate that support to those who are interested in watching and the engagement that we have within our city. For the last 15 years, I've worked with Canada Revenue Agency, mostly in their contact center, answering inquiries from taxpayers and assisting with complex tax matters in regards to individual tax inquiries and benefits. As a senior agent, I have received the top-level performance review for the last 5 years, and I believe that those skills will suit me well as a city councillor. I'm familiar with interpreting and reading legislation as well as policies. I also have had experience in dealing with various levels of management and know how to conduct myself in a meeting and know how meetings should be conducted. Most of all, it's the listening skills. I know how to listen to what's being said and determine the underlying issues to make sure to find out what your concerns are to address them as best I can. I was born and raised in Ward 5 in the Riverdale East community, an area my parents still live. In the last 10 years, we were looking for a house, and my wife and I bought our house in the Kentley neighborhood where we're raising our daughter. I've also been involved in the community there. My daughter is an active soccer player with East Hamilton Soccer Club, and I've also gotten involved with my daughter's school as part of the school council, most years serving either as chair or a co-chair of her school council. She's a major drive for me on why I have the interest to set myself forward for public office. I want to provide a city where she can age successfully and then we can successfully raise a child as part of those goals within the city of Hamilton. For more information, you can reach my website at bobhurst.ca. Thank you.
Candidate Hurst, thank you very much for that. We will now continue on. Candidate Ryan Ladner, please take it away.
Thanks a lot, Mike, and thanks to Cable 14. Working directly with the residents of Ward 5 for nearly 8 years on issues that spanned all areas of government was a rewarding and fulfilling profession for me. Each day in the MPP's office was always a new experience. I never knew what to expect when I picked up the phone, checked my email, or saw the front door open. The people I interacted with could have had an issue with their landlord, a bad experience with the healthcare system, or just needed to talk about their lives. No matter the concern, it was my responsibility to do whatever I could to help. I've written many speeches over my time with a member of provincial parliament, but tonight is the first time I've been given the opportunity to deliver a message directly from my heart to the people I hope to soon represent. The city we live in is changing rapidly. People from all over the world, especially the GTA, are looking at Hamilton as a place to live and grow. The word is out that Ward 5 offers its residents a lifestyle that is safe, friendly, and welcoming. As our city grows, we will need leaders who will take into consideration the character and history of each neighborhood. We need to make sure that development is done with people in mind. Already we are seeing major changes to our traffic patterns, with dangerous driving becoming a constant concern. Accessing city services is becoming a challenge for many. City Council needs to ensure that each resident is able to rely on the services Hamilton offers, no matter their age, ability, background, or income. Council must also work with small businesses, many of whom have spent the past 5 years struggling to survive. Municipal government's job should not be to overburden or impede our entrepreneurs. We also need to address the continued crisis in housing. People should not be living in fear if they have to move from their home in order to avoid sky-high rent. On October 24th, vote for Ryan Ladner. I will work hard for the hardworking people of Ward 5. Thank you very much.
Mr. Ladner, thank you very much for that. We will now continue on. Candidate Linda Lukasik, please take it away.
Thank you to Cable 14 and the Hamilton Spectator for sponsoring this debate. My name is Linda Lukasik. I have lived in Ward 5's Kentley neighborhood for over 26 years. I love Hamilton. I have a lot to offer my city as an experienced advocate who knows how to make positive things happen. I also possess extensive environmental policy, management, and planning expertise. I'm inspired by the possibility of serving on a city council focused on realizing Hamilton's full potential. I've spent the last 20+ years as the executive director of Environment Hamilton, advocating for positive change in our city. This has included regularly interacting with city staff and councillors, sharing skills and knowledge with community members to facilitate their engagement in city issues, and serving as a stakeholder in many city initiatives. This work has made me extremely familiar with city operations and the various committees and subcommittees of Hamilton City Council. Ward 5 is diverse. It faces many challenges and opportunities. The area needs safer streets for everyone, from kids walking and biking to school to seniors using walkers to get to Eastgate Square. The beach community continues to struggle with industrial emission impacts. Advocacy from City Council is needed to address these pollution problems. Downtown Stony Creek is struggling. A collective effort could make it a vibrant hub that provides easy access to key services, especially on foot or by bike. Riverdale West has housing affordability challenges, a lack of quality park space, and an underutilized rec center. Riverdale's challenges demand city action to ensure good quality of life in every neighborhood. Proposed residential and commercial development along the Queenston Centennial Corridor near the future LRT and GO train service opens the door to car-free living, but must be pursued carefully to ensure that current and future residents are not negatively impacted. The ward councillor will play a critical role in all of these challenges and opportunities. I possess the knowledge and experience to be that person, engaging community and advocating for positive outcomes for all ward residents. Thank you.
Candidate Lukasik, thank you so much for that. We will now continue on with candidate Angela Puleheze. Please take it away.
Thank you, Cable 14, Mike. I am a lifelong Hamiltonian. As a person with a disability, I went back to school. I educated myself in photography and small business and entrepreneurship at Mohawk College. Previously, I worked in customer service for 17 years. I am a proud mom to a son who's exceptional. I have been advocating for autism, people with disability, tenant rights, as well as been participating in various committees. My parents moved to Ward 5 in 1973 when it was a developing community, and I have watched this ward develop throughout the years. However, I know there is more that needs to be done. I believe in transparency, inclusion, accessibility, affordable housing, which is a crisis in our city and within. My passion and desire was always to be a city council so that I can bring a positive changes within our ward and community. I've spoken to many merchants inside Eastgate Square that have a major concern about what the plans are and what the future is of the mall. I like to say I want to make sure that if I did become a city council, I want to ensure that it remains an indoor and it's accessible within the community. You can contact me at angela.puyese, Ward 5, at Hamilton. You can call me anytime, 289-489-4993. Thank you.
Candidate Puleheze, thank you very much. And our final candidate in studio with us tonight, Mr. George Rusich, please take it away.
Good evening, Ward 5. My name is George Rusich. I own one of the top sports training and rehabilitation clinics in the country. I have 25 years of volunteer experience in youth sports. I'm a proud father to my 6-year-old son, Jackson, and 3-year-old son, Jordan. Hi, boys. And I'd also like to recognize my biggest supporter, my beautiful partner and mother to my children, Heather. I want to touch on 3 key components in my platform: economic recovery, including small business, responsible housing, and employment. I will be in constant contact with builders for the responsible and ethical development within our boundaries and hold landlords accountable. I will merge the bridge between all levels of government and continue to push for a living wage and a resource center for residents within our ward in regards to housing and employment. Small businesses will not feel isolated and alone as we will develop a support network. Number 2, schools and youth, including extracurricular opportunity and involvement, safety and facilities improvements. All schools in our ward should be equipped with a recreation center to utilize the school off hours and create an extra revenue source for the city, both Catholic and public sources. Unsafe streets, I believe, start with the behaviors in the classroom. So we need an annual extracurricular fund for youth under 16 to keep them engaged, motivated, and involved. Stony Creek Arena, for example, corporate sponsorship is needed. Financial institutions need to partner within our community at a greater capacity. Pickleball near Grays Road, let's finalize those plans. It's a year already. Viola Desmond School is a mess. Portables, the school hadn't even opened yet. Better research, future planning, and projections is needed in the ward. Confederation Park and the waterfront should not be an embarrassment. A highlight for tourists to the city and for families to gather, not a detour to Burlington's waterfront. And my final here, seniors in our diversity, we are a slightly older crowd in Ward 5, so community care programs for our seniors to gain mobility and have access to social events and appointments. We need to lower the free transit rate from 80 to 65. I'm a proud product of immigrant parents and grandparents. Ward 5 has one of the most culturally diverse compositions. We need to celebrate this and ultimately promote inclusivity. We have to be cognizant of the needs of the First Nations, Inuit, and Métis members of our community. Why would you vote for me, Ward 5?
Mr.
I work in
Rusich,
environment.
I'm sorry, but our time has run out. Appreciate that. Thank you all to our candidates for those opening statements. We will now continue on with our second part of the show. Bringing in our local media panel, which is very important to us. And with us for this debate are Matthew Van Dongen from the Hamilton Spectator and Matt Ingram from CHCH News. Now, each of our reporters will be choosing a candidate to answer a question, and then other candidates can ask to respond. So please make sure you indicate, although we may not have time for everyone, all of your responses will be limited to 1 minute. I'll give a warning when time has run out. Our first question comes from the Spectators. Matthew Van Dongen, take it away.
Thanks very much. Hello, everyone. Thanks for having me. This is a question that could go to anyone, but I'll start with Krista. There is a high-density residential makeover in the works for Eastgate Square. My simple question is, do you support that? Why or why not?
So there's no discounting the fact that we are in an affordable housing crisis. And in order to get out of this affordable housing crisis, part of that plan needs to be that we build more inventory for our residents. Now, in building more inventory, we have to be very cautious and we have to be meaningful in our approach, because these dense developments have impacts in our neighborhood. So one thing that absolutely needs to happen is public engagement. We need to have open forums where we're having discussions, where we're truly getting an understanding of what the neighborhood wants and needs. And at the same time, we do need to develop. So in regards to the current development that's in place, yes, I have my own concerns because it will impact the neighborhoods. It will impact traffic in an area where traffic is already a challenge. But at the same time, we need housing units. So it's about creating that balance. So in regards to your question, Matthew, and thank you for that, I appreciate it. We have to do meaningful, balanced development.
Thank you very much for that response. We will now continue on with Matt Francis, who'd like to respond to that specific question.
Yeah, thank you. I want to let everybody know I put a survey out to the community as soon as I found out this news. Linda Lukasik, you called this exciting news before the community even had a chance to see what this was. It ended up being two 40-story towers there. I heard from 500 people in this area, talking to people, knocking on their doors. They're very concerned about this. Kenora and Delawana, that's a cut-through road for traffic. They're already dealing with parking issues, traffic concerns. If you've driven down Centennial Parkway during this time period, you know that it's a disaster. And I'll be pushing back against this plan. This is what the community wants, and this is where I'll stand on this issue.
Thank you for that. And actually, we have Linda to follow up with that. Linda.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, so one thing that I do want to clarify is the previous councillor and council supported this redevelopment going ahead. It's within the neighborhood plan already. So as of right, the developer can build up to 20 stories. I live in this neighborhood, so I'm very tuned into what's happening. I'm impacted by the shortcut traffic. I share concerns about going beyond what's in the existing secondary plan, and clearly we haven't had the community conversations. And from a planning point of view, the approvals aren't in place yet to go with anything taller than 20 stories. What is happening, and one of the reasons why the past councillor and council supported what is going ahead, is this is the eastern terminus of the LRT. So this is about transit-oriented development. It's about starting to address the climate emergency and to address the housing crisis at the same time. So certainly I'm all for family-friendly units being considered here, affordable housing, deeply affordable housing, and accessible housing, and it could make a huge difference.
Matt Ladner, you wanted to get in on this as well.
Thanks very much. Yeah, I've been speaking to a lot of residents in the area as well. Delawana Street, for example, is just a cut through. I actually witnessed on a solid line, a person driving at regular speed being overtaken by a BMW. And these are issues that are going to continue to get worse. Currently, I live in an area that has a lot of construction and development in it. The roads are destroyed, dust, construction, noise, parking. These things are extremely frustrating for residents. We need to have an idea as to what this is going to be, how long it's going to be. And as Linda mentioned here, it's going to be the terminus for the LRT. So that's also going to, obviously going to have a lot of construction and those types of concerns for the neighborhood. So also when you're looking at intensifying where people are residing in this part of the city, traffic density is just going to continue to get worse and worse and worse. So right now, Highway 20, Centennial, is basically an impenetrable pathway. You can't get through it. There's just two crosswalks. People are scared to even cross the road now. So I think we need to be smart when it comes to this type of development.
Thank you very much for that, Ryan Ladner, and I apologize. I got Matt on the brain. We got a few of them in here tonight, so I apologize for that. Up next, for this particular topic, George Rusich.
One thing we haven't focused on is, I mentioned earlier how we made a mistake with the school, Viola Desmond. Was the proper research done, and was it transparent to the residents of Ward 5? I don't believe so. We mentioned, the Eastgate Square. We mentioned the development at Eastgate Square. One thing we don't touch on is, the housing is available, but where are the funds coming from the residents when we're displacing hundreds of employees within Eastgate Square? What is their next step? Have we done the research based on where we're better suited? Are we better suited with the development? Like Matt mentioned with the pole, that's something that has to be transparent with our residents, plain and simple.
Thank you for that response. Matt, I see, did you want to get back involved with this?
Yeah, I just want to finish up my my statement on this. I don't believe we obviously need to intensify as a city. I don't think we need to be focusing our intensification efforts at downtown Stony Creek, ruining that beautiful charm of our Stony Creek area. And in Ward 5, we shouldn't be housing the tallest buildings in our entire city right there on Centennial Parkway in Ward 5. Our intensification efforts should be downtown Hamilton.
Thank you very much for that. Krista Boyer, last comment to you on this particular topic.
We can't look at it in terms of the crux of development needs to be downtown. Yes, development, there's an opportunity for focus downtown because of the infill opportunities and what have you, but it's inevitable. Development is going to take place in all wards within the city, and we have to start looking at development in Stony Creek as a real possibility. But again, it has to be something where we're putting everything into consideration in regards to how it will impact our neighborhoods. So, I think we do need to move forward with this development, not maybe in the manner in which it is being offered, right? Again, up for debate, up for questions from the neighbors and input from the neighbors. But we do need to start moving forward with development in our neighborhood. We want to retain our youth. We want to retain and attract talent to Stony Creek. We want to increase employment. We want job creators. In order to do that, we have to bring people, we have to bring inventory in, and we have to bring Stony Creek. And the only way we bring people to Stony Creek is we have to provide housing. So,
Krista Boyer, thank you very much. We do have to continue and move on. With that said, our media panel will continue from CHCH. Mr. Matt Ingram. Matt, take it away.
Thanks very much for having me tonight. I really appreciate it. My question is for you, Ryan. I listened very carefully to all of your introductions. Housing was mentioned by some of you, not others. You mentioned it, that affordability in housing was going to be a big issue. Beyond this development that we're discussing, as a council, you're going to have the ability to impact housing policy for the entire city. Yeah. What kind of new ideas would you bring to council, if elected, to create more units, not just of affordable housing, but the missing middle as well?
Thank you very much. One of the issues that I dealt with probably almost primarily towards the end of my tenure in my previous position was housing. I'm talking like maybe a third of all phone calls. A lot of these were coming from Hamilton Housing themselves. Hamilton itself as a city is one of the largest property owners and maintainers in the city. They're doing a pretty terrible job at it in terms of what I've been seeing. So number one, in terms of finding affordable houses, the current stock that we have has to actually be taken care of. We have asbestos abatement, we've got pest control problems, we've got vacant units that could be repaired and are sitting there off the market, not available to these individuals that are at reasonable rates. We also have a significant number of buildings that were previously commercial at the bottom, residential at the top. These are things we've heard about for a long time. There's a lot of opportunity for infill, especially like that Barton corridor, places that at least are respectable. I've lived in places like that before, as long as they're nice and they're well maintained, and that the property maintenance folks in charge of in the city here, property bylaw, go in and ensure that places are actually livable and decent and affordable. Those are ways that we can start to address this issue.
We will give you an opportunity for final comment. In the meantime, Linda, I saw you wanted to get involved with this.
Yeah, I think there's lots that the city can do, and some of it involves acquiring more land, so getting more land into city hands. And that's something, in my role at Environment Hamilton, I've been part of a collective that's advocated for that to happen. So we know that there are councillors starting to push for that and staff starting to look at where can we get more land into city hands to start to address the housing crisis. But I'd add too, there are lots of other creative non-market ways to encourage more housing. We in the past, we saw lots more housing co-ops, land trusts with housing being established on that land. And I think the municipality needs to look at ways to support the re-emergence of those kinds of activities as well to provide more housing in the city.
Thank you very much for that response, Krista Boyer.
Yeah, so what I'd like to add to that is that we also additionally need to advocate to our federal and provincial partners to get more funding for development of affordable housing within the city of Hamilton. And further, we need to advocate for policy change. There are some market practices that take place currently that if we were to change those practices, and I'll give you an example, a lot of my realtor colleagues will not appreciate this, but blind offers. In the real estate market, blind offers, where we don't know what the next person is paying, it has the opportunity to drive up prices in a market that's already inflated, that's already causing problems in affordability. So I'd like to see some policy change. I'd also want to engage the stakeholders, the community members, and the experts in our community. Bring together the partners who already have some ideas on solutions, and let's really formulate a plan for affordable housing within the city of Hamilton.
Thank you very much for that response. George Rusich, you wanted to jump in on this.
Yeah, just in regards to the lack of housing, land is great, but Ward 5, there's not much land left to build on. So let's make up for a mistake of the past where we should have put the stadium, I believe, and let's start development there. That's a beautiful spot to live. Like Matt grew up in the beach area. That's a beautiful spot. Let's focus on the areas that we have available to us. On the other hand, I'd open this up to anyone else. How's that going to solve out-of-towners scooping up the housing that we're proposing?
Thank you very much for that response. We will get to Bob Hurst first and then Krista.
One thing with the market when it comes to who owns a majority of the market. So right now there's 25% of the market is owned by investors. So yes, that's a practice that we need to revisit. When we talk about out-of-towners coming in, I wouldn't want to shame anyone for wanting to be part of this great city. We need more people who are like-minded to come to the city to, grow it properly, expand it in the way in which we, are going to be successful. So as much as it is, and the challenge is everywhere, it's not unique to Hamilton. The challenge exists anywhere. So I still think we should welcome these people in with open arms while we're working towards a solution in this crisis.
Bob Hurst.
Thank you, Matt. I think we've seen some changes within the ward and really everywhere when it comes to the use of space, particularly on a commercial side. More and more people are getting used to ordering things online and getting it delivered. Really, many retail spaces are struggling because they have the difficulty getting those businesses in there. That, I think, provides the opportunity for some of those spaces to be ideal places for the infilling, to be that creative infill option that we're looking for. Having those ideas where we do have, like Ryan had mentioned, the storefront on the main level, and then higher levels can be apartment buildings. Those mixed-use buildings, I think, are a very creative solution that allows businesses to have those storefronts, because we do need to make sure that people have the things they can get to. That 15-minute walk for anything you need should be a target everywhere across the city, and also provide more housing by being able to build up, even if it's just a matter of a couple of stories. That can provide a good number of units.
Bob, thank you very much for that. We want to get to Stan. We'll get to, I'm told we got
just a note here. Everybody's talking about housing, increase in influx in people living in Ward 5s. What are we going to do about the healthcare situation? The St. Joe's ambulatory is just not cutting it with a lot of people. They go there, then they get switched off and transferred over to St. Joe's or the general, and they're told that by doctors that are working inside that ambulatory. So, it's nice to talk about housing, but you've got to consider that other part too, and that as we get older, we have a tendency in that of utilizing those healthcare facilities a little bit more than the usual. Okay?
Thank you very much for that. And again, to all of our candidates, reminder, try to get my attention if you want to jump in on a topic sooner rather than later, okay? And finally, your final comment, Mr. Ladner, on this particular topic.
Yeah, and just to build on that, like going through some of the neighborhoods in the like the old Stony Creek area, there's one proposal that people were looking into and I was looking into where the ground floor was commercial. And of course that looks great. They do it in Mississauga, they do it in downtown Toronto, and you get residents above. But what everyone's confused about in that area is why would you need ground floor commercial, for example, when you've got commercial properties in the old downtown right on King Street that are vacant. And they're being sold in some cases too. A lot of people are saying, what happened to the old shops? What happened about, the old dress shop that I used to go to when I was a kid? Well, those have gone because businesses have not been incentivized in those areas. So if we're talking about strictly building residential, then why is commercial coming along with it when we're already seeing a glut in the market? The other thing that we need to also be smart about, I received a phone call from a constituent the other day, and she was asking how the process would work for her and her husband, who both have accessibility issues. And I said, well, really, their daughter wants to make a nanny suite. I said, well, that's going to be a permit and building issue. This stuff needs to be moved forward and easier to access for people that want to start combining families as people age.
Candidate Ladner, thank you very much for that. We appreciate it. Viewer questions have been coming in fast and furious, and I get the honor of reading those questions that are coming in. And remember, if you're watching this live, please send us your questions to election@cable14.com. And of course, this one is now regarding our aging infrastructure, specifically roads. It remains a significant concern for residents across the city. What plans do you have to address these significant expenses? And Bob, I'm seeing that was directed towards you to start off.
Thanks, Mike. I certainly think there is an issue with infrastructure. The well-meaning councils of several last terms have opted to try and make sure that we don't have budgetary increases. And that's all well and good to make sure that taxpayers are saving money. But the concern becomes, what if it's infrastructure that we need to fix? And it's not just the roads, there's infrastructure everywhere. I was visiting one of the city housing buildings in Ward 5, and they had the elevator scheduled to be replaced at the end of September. It was going to be closed until November. So the residents were advised to get everything ready, do whatever grocery shopping they needed to do, things like that. And then last week, the elevator broke. It's gone. They're not going to have an elevator now, likely until November. And they didn't have the time to prepare. Had this elevator been fixed when it probably needed to be replaced initially, there wouldn't be this issue. But we've tried to save money by not spending it at the time. And anyone who has had to deal with repairs in their house or with their car realizes that if you don't do the maintenance to take care of the costs when they're necessary, you're going to end up paying more in the long run when you have emergency repairs to do.
Thank you for that. Linda Lukasik?
Yeah, we've got a huge infrastructure deficit, and it's a challenge we need to wrangle down, and it's not going to be easy. And I'd add that, a lot of it is due to just the history of how this city has evolved and grown. We've continually marched outwards. And when you do that, there's more infrastructure that you need to keep on maintaining. And clearly we failed to do that as a municipality. So it's sort of a couple of things. We need to wrangle in that debt, and we need to do a better job of making more efficient use of the infrastructure that exists already. And that includes, some of what we've been talking about already, doing a better job of, making better use of properties like Eastgate Square, but doing it right so that there's the right balance that works for the neighborhood where that development is happening.
Thank you for that, Linda. Krista Boyer?
Firstly, I love that comment, march outwards. That's beautiful, Linda. I would add to that one thing we need to do as well, and this is across the board with any contract the city enters into with the vendors, we need to enforce our contracts. When warranties are in place and roads are in a matter of disrepair, we need to make sure that the proper maintenance is taking place by enforcing warranties. And like I said, that should be across the board.
Thank you very much for that response. We'll now, I see on my list here, I got Ryan Ladner. Please take it away.
Well, one of the problems that I've been noticing as well, we've all driven down those streets, and every lot in front of it has a chunk of asphalt that's been removed. Reconnect has been done, whether that's for changing the piping or there's been a burst. And you drive down these streets and it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, sometimes the entire street. And city crews are dispatched in order to do that. And so you have to beg yourself the question, like, okay, if apartment number or house number 2, house number 4, house number 6 are all going to have the same issue done, then why is the city not looking at, okay, let's just redo the entire road piecemeal? And that would be a cost savings. It's just those types of things that have never really made sense to me over these years. And of course, people calling my office back and saying, if there's a road crew again, I can't get out of my driveway type of thing. So there needs to be more coordination with how we're going about infrastructure repair, specifically roads. And to Krista's point with warranty on work that's actually being done, we're looking at one of the greatest tragedies in the city's history with the Red Hill disaster. And where was the warranty on that? Obviously, the inquiry is in motion right now, but that's just a perfect example of the right thing not being done when it should have been.
Thank you very much for that response. Angela, you'd like to get in on this?
Yes. First of all, infrastructure is a major issue, and the majority of it is that it's not done properly. They take a cheaper version of doing repairs than just to do the whole. As if they did the whole, it wouldn't be in a situation that we leave where we're going back and doing the construction all over again. And that's a major concern that's happening within these cities, within our ward and throughout the city.
Angela, thank you for that. We'll continue on now with George Rusich. You'd like to get involved?
Yes, in regards to infrastructure, I've been a victim basically of construction, and we really have to do our research within the businesses in Ward 5 and set a timeline of when certain roadways or infrastructure is going to be replaced, because with COVID just slowing down, businesses were handcuffed for the past few years. 1 or 2 days, even a weekend, could do some businesses in right now. They're hanging by a thread. With regards to the experience that some of us have, it's just that I feel, as a director of sales with my business, I had $2 in my pocket to fill gas 8 years ago, and now I got $1 million sports rehab clinic. I feel that I would reach out to some of these financial institutions, like I mentioned in my opening. These recreational facilities, yeah, let's build palaces with pools and courts, and let's just keep adding to our tax base, which is one of the lowest in the country, commercial tax bases in Hamilton. Where are we getting the rest of these funds? Why are we not going to these banks and saying, listen, you hold my parents' mortgage, line of credit, all this debt. Where are you when our youth needs sponsorship on these facilities? Where are you?
George, thank you very much for that. Stan Habza.
All my life I've had to pay user fees to offset costs of all the maintenance that has to be done to the Red Hill and the Link. Why don't we address putting tolls, with the exception that if your tax dollars are going to the city of Hamilton, be it resident or be it business, at the end of the year and that, you get refunded those monies that you've paid to use that parkway, to use that link. It's a pass-through, a major pass-through through the city. No different than Delaware is in that for residents and people going to Eastgate Square. Tolls are my way of thinking in that. I have no problem with paying for something that I use.
Stan, thank you very much for that. Final word will go to Bob Hurst before we move on to the next topic.
Thanks, Mike. I've seen a few mentions from some engaged citizens online within Hamilton who have taken a look at the numbers publicly available through the city site and comparing the amount of property taxes that we have, so the revenue the city is working with, comparing a single-family dwelling in a suburban area versus an area that is more filled with townhouses or apartment buildings or things like that. And the tax dollar difference is staggering. There's so much more revenue through that infill that it ends up being more of a net benefit to the city. So that's part of everything all ties together. Having more housing by making it more available and doing that infill does improve the tax base, which allows us to put more into the infrastructure to make sure that the city is properly maintained.
Thank you very much for that response. We will now continue with questions from our media panel. Back from the Hamilton Spectator, Mr. Matthew Van Dongen, take it away.
Thanks very much. Residents of Ward 5, and in particular on the beach strip, are downwind of more than their fair share of industrial pollution and odors. Sometimes it's dust from the steel factories, sometimes it's salt, sometimes it's even the smell of fertilizer from the city's own sewage plant. The province is the main regulator, obviously, of polluters here and everywhere. But what, Linda, I'll direct this question to you, what can the city do to better protect residents, if anything, in these situations?
I'm really glad that you asked that question, Matt. Through my work at Environment Hamilton, I've been advocating for over 20 years to see improvements to the emissions from these facilities, and things are getting better. But all the way along, I've always felt if only we had city councillors vocally standing with us and advocating for more improvements, we would have been able to make more happen far more quickly. We're shifting right now into an era where ArcelorMittal Dofasco, for instance, is transitioning to green steel production. It's an exciting time. By 2028, that facility will have all but eliminated its really serious air emissions and reduced greenhouse gas emissions by a huge amount. But I'm really worried about the intervening 6 years because they'll continue to run the old plant, the old coke ovens, the old blast furnaces, the old basic oxygen furnace. And I'm already asking questions about, are you going to keep on investing money in those old facilities, or are we going to have impacts on community? Council plays a critical role, especially in the next term, to make sure that we don't see more problems emerge.
Thank you very much for that. Matt Francis, you'd like to get involved with this.
Yes, thank you. This is an excellent question, especially since this is somewhere where I grew up. I spent over 20 years living on the beach and dealing with these environmental impacts. It's getting worse over the years too. So I have a track record of holding the Port Authority accountable. I think it's time that we work together and make sure that we're pushing them to rezone these lands from this heavy industrial to prestige commercial, and also the salt piles that are down there. If I'm elected, I will get those salt piles moved, and we will stop damaging your properties along Beach Boulevard.
Thank you for that. Ryan Ladner, you'd like to get involved.
Yeah, I'm just reminded, there was an issue that I was dealing with about 2 years ago where a street cleaning crew that was contracted by the province of Ontario to take care of the QEW that runs over the beach strip chose a particularly dry, hot day to take their equipment over the bridge. And I know, Linda, you were a part of that. You saw what was happening there. It made CH News. Now, the province basically just kicked it down to the contractor and said, well, it's between legal counsel with the contractor and the citizens who actually had their residences severely damaged to work out a fee. Now, upon my last day, I checked in with one of the residents, and he still had received no compensation for the damage that they had to have commercially cleaned. What has to happen is each level of government needs to be held responsible for the contractors that are responsible for the work. In this particular case, these people thought there was actually a fire on the QEW. The smoke and debris and dust was that bad. But we have to work together as councillors to cohesively address what's going on at levels of government like the province as a total of a city council to get these issues dealt with and contractors to live up to their obligations.
Thank you very much for that response. And as I see no one else is looking to get involved, Linda, we will give final word to you for that particular question.
Thank you very much. I just wanted to add that, when it comes to these industrial emissions, some of the larger players like ArcelorMittal Dofasco own the property that they're sitting on. So, unfortunately, the Port Authority isn't going to be the entity that can come in and make a difference. I mean, they certainly lease land to industries that are having impacts, but some of the big players, it's those players that own the property and the Ministry of Environment at the provincial level that's regulating. But again, as the City of Hamilton, as City Council, we can certainly advocate and pressure for them to do the right thing. Thank you.
Thank you to all who responded to that question. Media panel is back from CHCH. Matt Ingram, take it away, my man.
Thanks very much. My question is for you, George. You mentioned your prowess as a businessman. You suggested that financial institutions should be playing more of a role in supporting community initiatives. I'm wondering, besides that idea, what are your other ideas for helping the City of Hamilton generate new revenue?
So when I ran last election there for mayor, everything about my platform was creating revenue beyond taxation. And I feel like our city focuses so much on the downtown core, so I'm going to focus on Ward 5. Just recently, I went to an OHL game in Niagara, and it's the Meridian Credit Arena. They have another community rink within that area. So I really feel that is my number one revenue creating source. And to be honest, I'm all about the co-op grocery stores as well. Like, I know Metro, Fortino's, a lot of these big box names are making a fortune off of us. And during COVID, a lot of us weren't essential. They are. Why are they in our wards reaping the benefits of the essentialness of their business? Why are we as a ward with such a low employment rate? Why are we not running these grocery stores that are essential and will create revenue for the ward?
Thank you very much for that response. Bob Hurst, you'd like to get involved.
One area that I noticed that doesn't have nearly as much as the way of potential revenue that it remember having when I was a child was being on the bus. I was recently on the bus to go to a few different events, and I recognized looking at, wow, there's hardly any advertisement on this bus. There used to always have filled with all the advertisements. I understand that it may be a challenge to get advertisers looking to get those spots, especially during the pandemic where the buses haven't been used. But the city should take more of a business approach to that advertising and really cross-promote ourselves. If we're not going to be able to sell the advertising, if we fill that with various city services, what's going on in city events, promote things like the Peach Festival and other events that are going on like Supercrawl, to really make sure people are aware of the events and the role that the city plays within those events, then once those spots are full, you may start to see advertisers actually do want to participate in that. We don't need to have signs on there saying we're getting rid of bus passes, which we got rid of 2 years ago.
Thank you very much for that. Ryan Ladner, you'd like to jump in?
No, I'm okay.
No, you're okay?
No, just fine.
Okay, excellent. Well, we will continue on then. Krista, you want to get in?
Yes.
Sorry, I
If you
didn't
don't mind,
see you there.
sir.
Okay,
It was
last
very
minute.
last minute at hand.
Yep, okay, perfect.
And thank you, Matt, for the question. And I do want to echo what George is saying, because I think that's a great approach, is to bring the larger corporations more into the community by asking them and giving them opportunities to provide further funding, whether it's for programs, initiatives, or development. There's so much to gain by bringing in these corporations. So I would echo that as well.
Wonderful, thank you. George, final word, we'll go to you.
Just something we lack. Supercrawl is one of the greatest events possibly in the province, not the country. We really don't have any cultural events within our ward, which allow people to see the potential and of business owners within the ward and the success that they are having despite COVID. So it's just the exposure in Ward 5. It's just not there. We're not utilizing the water. Like, I keep going back to the waterfront. Where Matt's living is beautiful. Down near Confederation Park, it's embarrassing. My kids say, "Daddy, we're not going there today." Like, there's got to be vendors down there. We got to advertise. We got to incentivize them, like someone said earlier. We got to be creative. We got to be innovative.
George, thank you very much for that. And of course, thank you very much to our media colleagues for their questions. It's greatly appreciated, to Matthew Van Dongen and of course Matt Ingram. Now for our open forum. We will give as many candidates as we can a minute to direct a question to one other candidate. That candidate will then have a chance to respond, and then we will open up the floor for other brief comments. And again, our time will be limited, but I will let you know when we have to move on. Now, we drew numbers earlier this evening ahead of our broadcast to determine the order of this segment. Linda Lukasik, you are up first. Your question, who you're directing it to, please.
Thanks, Mike. I'm going to direct my question to Matt Francis. Matt, municipalities in Ontario must plan to accommodate urban growth based on population and jobs projections for the next 30 years, so out to 2051, as set by the province, and this is mandatory. The City of Hamilton has opted to keep its urban boundary firm and accommodate this growth within the existing urban area. This decision has been fueled by community concern about urban sprawl development and the resulting loss of prime farmland and rural open spaces, creation of more car-dependent neighborhoods, and the sheer cost to provide the infrastructure and services to support sprawl. For instance, studies have shown that expansion areas cost as much as 2.4 times more to support than development within existing urban areas, leaving existing residents like us to subsidize infrastructure and service costs. So my question is, do you support the city's decision to keep the boundary firm and accommodate urban growth within it?
Thank you, Linda, for the question. I will respect Council's decision on this matter that they made in November of 2021. And I also want to speak to the fourplexes that are being imposed in our established communities as a result of this. Of course, we need to focus on an intensification, but focusing our efforts in on our established communities is not where we should be doing this. I circulated a survey which went to thousands of residents in Ward 5, and I got a 98% no response to this. People don't want this in their established communities. People have moved to Ward 5 to get away from downtown, to get away from the busyness. They love their beautiful, quiet communities in Ward 5. They love that beautiful charm of downtown Stony Creek. We obviously need to grow in this city. Our intensification efforts should not be happening in our established communities and our single-family detached homes.
Thank you for that response. Anybody else? Yes, please, Bob, I just saw your hand.
There was a general issues committee meeting, I believe, where it was raised that Lloyd Ferguson was pushing to have Ancaster exempted from any sort of changes in regards to triplexes or quadplexes. And there was certainly a hue and cry when one particular area was going to be getting that, which is essentially NIMBYism within our borders. Then when it came to the actual city council meeting, they ended up overruling that and saying, no, it will be something that can happen everywhere. And that's really fair because it should be something that can happen everywhere. It does need to be part of the community. There needs to be engagement there. And it needs to be clear, too, that when we're talking about those triplexes and quadplexes, they're not going to be happening very frequently, because building to make those changes is a completely different process than being able to make those changes if the housing already accommodates it. So there's a big difference there, but that infill is something that is necessary unless we all want to see our taxes go up, because that's what's going to keep happening if we want to go and expand out, because we need to expand up.
Krista Boyer?
Great question, Linda. And so I am against urban land boundary expansion. I think council made the right decision in maintaining our boundaries for a few reasons. You know, food security is an issue. We need to protect our farmland for that very reason. And we have so much opportunity, you know, going down to the, now not Ward 5, but looking at the downtown. The fact that we're not building out anymore means we're building up. And I think it's such a great opportunity to provide further investments to private and public sector development in order to start building up in our community. So yes, I agree for all the reasons that you stated in your question. We shouldn't expand beyond the boundary.
Matt Francis.
Yeah, I just want to touch on something you said there. You know, if you lived in the ward, you would understand that the people of Ward 5 do not want their beautiful suburban communities intensified in this manner. And I would encourage anybody going forward, we will put our intensification efforts towards building our downtown core, not in their beautiful backyards in Ward 5, and fourplexes is not the way to go about this.
See, you know, I think it's unfortunate that we live within these manufactured boundaries when we speak in terms of community. So although I don't live in Ward 5, I live in Stony Creek, I'm on Millen Road, and how I define my community is where I spend my time. So I spend my time primarily in the downtown, Old Town, Stony Creek, and within the Ward 5 boundaries. I volunteer there, all my friends are there. This is my community. So I think as council, like we've seen it in past where we operate within these boundaries and it does the community a disservice. We have to think bigger in order to move forward as a community.
Linda?
Yeah, I just want to add too. I think it's interesting. This fourplex issue has been thrown out there, and I think there's a little bit of fear mongering happening, and this idea that this protection of low density residential areas. I think there are lots of really creative ways to start to accommodate changes. I would point out that in Ward 5 right now, there are large swaths of the ward where you in fact cannot yet pursue fourplexes. We've still got to do some formal planning change and consultation before that happens. And it feels as though there are opportunities to make it work well. And I've been watching planning staff and how carefully they're moving forward with these policy changes. And for instance, right now, the idea is you can only put a fourplex within an existing home. You can't raise a building and build new. And so this is over 30 years as well. So we're not going to see overnight transformations of neighborhoods. I think that's fear-mongering when we talk about it in that way.
Stan?
I'm in agreement with Matt here. I'm against urban sprawl, totally. We need our farmland, okay? I think in that the city should be focusing on the route that fast ride to eternal dead, I call it, okay, the LRT. Build downtown, rebuild the downtown area. When I was a kid, you couldn't walk downtown because you used to bump into people. Now, it's not like that anymore. And I think in that, if you want to get that intensification, that bring it back into the center core. I mean, I worked at Cops Coliseum. People were afraid to come downtown and take in an event. Okay, so people like Chris is moving outside. Okay, right. But I'm in favor now with intensifying the downtown core along that LRT line.
Thank you all for your response to that. I know this is a hot topic for your ward. However, we do need to continue to move on if we want everyone to get in with their questions. So with that said, George Rusich, your question, please.
Okay. My question is to Ryan.
Yeah.
Why does Ward 5 have one of the lowest educational rankings in the city, and how could we improve this?
I wasn't aware of that, actually. Well, we've been working a lot on redevelopment. Obviously, the board's working on putting the new schools where they actually need to be, and of course, that's been a struggle. I can't necessarily speak to that. There does need to be improvement with some places like Mohawk College, for example. There's a lot of great learning that goes on there. It's a great facility over on Barton Street, but we need to actually start expanding. There's tons of students that are going there. I've been through their facility multiple times. Those things need to be moved forward, and there needs to be actual expansion with Mohawk. I think that's what I would say on that issue.
Okay. I see everyone kind of nodding in agreement at this point, or at least that they're done with this question. So we will continue to move on then. That's wonderful. We will actually continue with you then, Ryan.
Thanks.
Your question, who you're proposing it to. And also just a reminder, please, folks, if we get to a topic and you want to continue it, please bring up the question a little bit later if you like. Put your hands up when you want to get involved. Mr. Ladner.
Hi, so my question's for Linda. You're known for your hardline stance on environmental issues, which is good. I've fought a few battles myself over the years. Ward 5 was built on our city's industrial heritage. Residents I've spoken with have shared the concerns about your somewhat negative relationship with our city's larger employers. I believe that is the role of a councillor to attract jobs and tax revenues that strengthen our city. How are you going to mend the fence between our major employers and yourself if there is a fence that needs to be mended?
Thanks for the question, Ryan. I feel like there isn't a fence that needs to be mended, and I'll explain why. I'm from a steel family, very proud of it. My grandfathers worked in the steel mills. My father worked at Dofasco. I spent a summer as a student working at Dofasco. It helped to pay for the long amount of time I spent at university getting an education. Here's what I would say. You know, there are sometimes tense moments over the years in interactions that I've had with industry, but I always interact with respect and based on the facts. And I know from conversations I've had with people that they respect me for that. So I think I would argue that it's not a matter of there being really problematic and combative relationships. I feel like that's not in my nature, but I feel as though it's worth fighting to, and maybe that's not the right choice of words, to improve our city. I've always believed that we deserve better, that we can have for instance, a steel industry that's greener rather than making trade-offs, because we have too long a history of trade-offs. And so I pride myself on helping to get our city to the point where we have one steel mill that's shifting to green. I mean, to me, that's incredible. If you told me 20 years ago when I started doing that work that we'd be on the brink of that today, I would have never believed it. But I think it has a lot to do with community advocating, and I'm really proud of the way that we've done that and what we've achieved.
Krista?
I just want to add to that point too. I have to say, like, I've been incredibly impressed with the work that Environment Hamilton has done over the years. And with the advance of green technology, there's so many opportunities for businesses to be more environmentally friendly in their approach as a business. So, you know, it's about, and looking at Linda and having followed her for so many years, I know she has good relationships, and whatever happens as far as how we move forward, Environment Hamilton is going to play and should play a very important role in how we develop as a city.
Bob?
I think one of the issues that I've seen within the city of Hamilton as a citizen myself and having friends in other cities as well, there's always seemed to be that divide that council makes some sort of decision, but there's a few councillors who didn't like the decision and continue to speak out about it, keep trying to find ways to take an off-ramp to change the decision. One of the lines that a previous supervisor of mine talked to me about, and I really like the mentality, is critically decide but loyally implement. And I think what we need is a councillor who will make those critical decisions along with the rest of council. But once a decision has been made, the city needs to put that united front. That's how you establish quality relationships with business partners. You make sure that the city is clear on what is going forward, and we're not backtracking and changing our mind. People know what to expect, and they can come in with that clear expectation.
Thank you for that response, Ryan. Thank you very much for the question. We will now continue on. A question coming from Stan Habza. Stan, your question, who you're directing it to, and please, if you want to get involved, just give me a wave and we'll get you to respond.
I'm putting it out there and that on the floor to everybody.
Actually, could you pick one candidate and then we can go around the horn, please?
Okay.
That'd be great.
Sure.
Thank you.
No problem. Sorry about that.
That's okay.
I'll put it to Matt. Are you in favor of putting tolls on the Parkway and the Link? for revenue purposes, cover maintenance costs, and possible lawsuits?
Thank you for the question, Stan. I would totally oppose putting tolls on our on the link and on the Red Hill.
Krista Boyer, would like to get involved with this?
Yes. So when we talk about building revenue, I think we also need to take a look at how fiscally responsible we are as a city, which I would argue that we haven't been as fiscally responsible as we could be. We're also in a time period where inflation is hitting some all-time highs. So this idea of asking people to put out more money during these stressful and challenging periods, I don't think that's quite the answer we're looking for. I like the fact that you're trying to think innovatively, as far as what can we do, but I don't know that this would be the approach. And when it comes to lawsuits, really, what we should be doing is avoiding them. We should be developing properly, we should be building properly so that we're not engaged in these lawsuits and losing millions and millions of dollars as a city because of it.
Ryan Ladner?
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for this. Good question. I would oppose it. I think toll roads, they negatively affect the individuals who can least afford to actually use them. There's a lot of folks in the city who can barely afford the gas, the car insurance, those types of things as we speak. And we all know what happened when we built this nice, beautiful road that takes us to Toronto, made out of concrete, and we sold it off, right? So I don't think at this point, maybe it's something that could be investigated, but at this stage, I don't think that tolling the link in the Red Hill is something that, for the betterment of our society and to get people from A to B, if you're living in Ward 5 but working in Ancaster, that's a toll that would just take too much out of a lot of those folks.
Linda Lukasik?
Yeah, one thing I'm intrigued about with your proposal is the reality that the Red Hill and the Link are municipally owned roadways. And I think it's fair to say that there are some drivers using them as though they're part of the provincial network. So I'm talking about someone who's, a vehicle or a truck that's just passing through the city. Yes. So it would be interesting if we could kind of differentiate and maybe impose the toll for vehicles that are cutting through, although I'm not sure whether the technology exists to do something like that. But that might be an interesting option to explore.
And I think I addressed that earlier in that, okay, by having an exception. And you can have that exception at taxation time, okay? Residents and businesses that pay their tax base and that, okay, to the city of Hamilton will get a buy, okay? And at the end of the year, if they have to pay, or you could use a QR code or whatever you want to call it in their taxation papers, where they list their vehicle plate numbers, okay? Because we're all stuck with the same plate numbers for a while, right? But it's probable, okay? And it's just a way of I mean, I can go from my place in Stony Creek to Ancaster and not use the link, and it's a much nicer drive because I don't have to worry about heavy truck traffic. I don't have to worry about speeding youths and that, okay, and that, and the little cutting machines, I call them, okay, and that to make all the noise and that, okay, in the middle of the night when I'm up, okay. But that's my take on it, and I appreciate the answers in that from.
I do see we'd like to get Angela involved.
Yes, as far as the tolls go, I think it's a little bit of a concern right now, especially with so many challenges financially right now. That's something maybe later on we may want to consider. However, right now, I think that might be very challenging and may cause a lot of anger towards drivers right now that are using that.
Thank you
but
for that.
I'm not saying that I'm against your idea or anything. I'm just saying from a perspective as a driver.
But one thing that you have to realize, you're not forced to use the parkway and the link. There's other accesses, okay? There are other means of transportation, like getting our HSR in to satisfy the need in that for better service. You've got an LRT being built in that down the middle of a road that it should have been on Main Street instead of King Street, okay? And you want us to use it. Well, if that had been a referendum in the last election, I think you would have seen it turned down big time. Because everybody I talk to, citywide, okay, and that do not think that that's the best way to invest our tax dollars.
Angela?
And it's only servicing and that, okay? But I'm just saying, there's other ways and means to go from point A to point Z, okay, if you want to call Ancaster point Z or...
It's true. I'm not trying to disagree with
you.
No,
I know. I'm just trying to address it, and
I guess
I'm
what
directing
I'm trying
it at
to
you.
say, as far as tolls go, right now, You may want to encourage people to take different routes instead, like advertise and such worth, like to get people to do different ways to get around the city. But to put a toll in right now, I think that would be, especially with everything that's going on with the global inflation, people struggling, it may be the biggest challenge ever. But I'm not saying I'm against your idea.
Okay. Thank you.
George, final comment from you on this particular topic.
So being counselors, we almost have to act as athletes and move forward from the negative, very short-term memory. The LRT, to be honest, I ran for mayor last election. I went along the corridor because it was basically an LRT referendum, which I got caught in, I felt. And the majority of the business owners along the LRT were not opposed to it. They were worried about what would happen to their business during the closure. So if we had a support network of how to fund these businesses or how to relocate them and how to help them, maybe that would change things. And all we speak on is how busy it's going to be with this LRT and how busy the Death Hill Valley is and all this. Why don't we use this with ads and marketing signage along these routes and create revenue, again, like I keep mentioning the whole night?
Thank you very much for that. We will continue on now. Mr. Matt Francis, your question and who you're directing it to, please.
Well, I have to return the favor, Chris, or Linda, sorry. I, for one, love our first responders. Our police, fire, and paramedics are vital services, and they do incredibly hard work and sacrifice their lives every time they put their uniform on. Just on Monday, we had a terrible incident where a police officer was murdered. Thankfully, our officers had the necessary training to stop the threat. I am beyond grateful for the officer who risked their lives to save others. Now imagine these officers were not properly trained and how a bad situation could become worse. Linda, you are the Executive Director for Environment Hamilton, which released a statement saying, "We support calls of Hamilton's defund the police." Do you still stand by defunding the police, or has your position changed on defunding the police now that you're running for council?
Yeah, thank you for the question. And certainly when we issued that statement, we, as an organization, we felt that that was the appropriate thing to do. And I think one thing I would start with is saying that I think that title, defund the police, is an unfortunate one because it implies that we're proposing harsh cuts to police services when really I think this is more about acknowledging the fact that the police are undertaking tasks that there are others in the community better suited to help with. We know we've got a crisis, for instance, in Hamilton, and we're seeing it in our ward too. I'm hearing it from people whose doors I'm knocking on. I'm seeing it around me, as I'm sure others in the room are. We have homeless people who are struggling with mental health issues, with drug addiction. And I'm not convinced that police responding to those kinds of crises is the most appropriate thing. So I would also add that I think as councillors, we need to be comfortable with critically assessing budgets, including the police budget. And my feeling is that what I've seen in previous terms of council is that there's been a reluctance to do that. So I would hope that a new city council is going to be comfortable having those conversations in a reasonable way to really consider what makes most sense. You know, allocating dollars in the direction of police to the amount that we currently are, does that make sense, particularly with some of the challenges that they're dealing with? Or can we find other creative ways? And I'm going to acknowledge, I think Hamilton Police Services has been exploring innovative ways, and they are using them in the downtown, where they send out teams that don't just include police officers, and I'd certainly support more of that kind of thing happening.
A few people want to get in on this. Let's start with Krista Boyer first.
Just to the last part of your comment, you're correct. Hamilton Police have been looking at ways to improve either the type of calls they're receiving, on how they approach them, and alleviate certain calls which shouldn't be theirs to respond to. I would say that policing is an essential service. And one thing that we need to do is we need to embolden those officers, those good officers out there who are doing a good job, and not forget them, and give them the platform that they need within an organization that is difficult and challenging, where there could be a culture of problematic and systematic issues. Now, we can't disregard, though, the fact that there has been some heavy, incredible issues that have arisen through the bad behavior of certain officers, and that needs to be addressed. process. And that's where counselors need to be champions and convey messages from the community and rally with the community to say, you know, we can't accept this as far as what's happening within Hamilton and some of these bad officers. But again, I want to stress the fact that there are very good officers out there. I know a lot of them. I volunteered with Hamilton Police for 7 years. We have to embolden these individuals. We have to work with Hamilton Police to create solutions as we move forward as a community.
Matt Francis.
Yeah, absolutely. We need to continue supporting affordable housing, mental health and addiction services, and treating everybody with dignity and respect. What we don't need is divisive American-style politics at City Council.
George Rusich.
So in a sense, we need to fund the police. If they're not equipped and we're putting them in a position that they're not educated on, why do we not have another division through the police force in regards to mental health that they can collaborate and work together in regards to issues when they get called out to family calls? We're putting them in a vulnerable position, and with young children in school and the way the world kind of is turning, I feel like there's not enough presence, to be honest. Nothing better than when you go to a school and there's a police officer present. They're the biggest, best volunteers the city has to offer, to be honest, and it gives everybody a sense of, most of us anyways, a sense of safety.
We have 3 more responses that we'd like to get in. Angela first, please.
First of all, from my own experience, because I have a son who's exceptional, so the police have had been called numerous times, and I feel for them because this is not really their area, and they don't have enough training in it. My son has autism, and we've had safety issue concerns. We need to get more programs put in place that will leave the police from these types of situations, so we can get crisis centers out to that situation. But the police do. I know so many police, and because I met them, and they're phenomenal. And I say we need to do something positive and thank them for everything that they do, which is outside areas that they normally should be responsible for, but to get more supports out there for crisis. When it's a crisis situation, let's get crisis programs, like individuals out there to serve them, than to take all our police away.
Angela, thank you very much. Very quickly, we'll go to Ryan and then Bob. Ryan.
Thanks, Mike. Yeah, there seems to be a bit of a disconnect between the citizenry, especially in Ward 5, from what it seems, and the actual police themselves. Knowing a lot of officers myself, they didn't really envision their job to be what it currently is right now in the city of Hamilton. When most people picture going into law enforcement, they picture pulling over drivers that are driving unsafe, keeping the community itself safe. But a lot of it is social work. A lot of it is interacting with individuals who they often know on first-name basis and do everything that they possibly can to ensure that they're safe and accessing housing the way they should be. So it's a social outreach program for the most part, or for a lot of what they do. But when I talk to the residents, they just want to see some of the old school policing. They want to see a cop car where the speeders like to go on Lake Avenue type of thing. They want a cop there once a week just to let people know that they might get pulled over.
Bob Hurst, final word.
I just want to again stress what Linda had said, that really the term defund the police is really intended to kind of catch people's attention, but it's not really about just completely defunding them. It's a matter of taking a critical analysis on how police spending is done. For example, we've had the issues on the trails within Hamilton where women are concerned with being sexually assaulted. I spoke to someone today who's afraid of taking her kids on the Red Hill Creek Trail to go down and cross that pedestrian bridge over the QEW because she doesn't feel safe. This summer, we had the police action that they said, hey, look, we got some new ATVs so we can go out and patrol the trails. And that's all well and good as long as nothing's happening, but if someone hears an ATV from a mile away, you're not going to catch anyone in the act. They should be out on mountain bikes or on horseback if that's a feasible option.
Thank you very much for that. We're going to try to get our 3 more questions in, so folks, if you could be a little more brief with your answers, that would be appreciated. I know we have lots to say. Krista Boyer, your question, who you'd like to direct it to, please.
I didn't think we'd get this far. Okay, my question is for George. Being a business owner yourself, I'm curious to know, so obviously we're coming out of very challenging times the last few years where we've been dealing with COVID and a rotating event of shutdowns for the businesses. I'd like to know what your plan is moving forward to provide support for our local businesses.
So the reason I'm running in Ward 5 is because I have many friends and family with businesses within the ward. I just feel like there was no support during COVID. You know, I would be Googling online, I'd go into the clinic and it'd be empty, looking for ways to get help. My accountant, I'm like, where are these support networks? Where are these links? Where are these forums? Why is this person getting 20,000? Where are they getting this money from? And why do I not have access to this? And speaking with the businesses, I'll actually, during my campaign, I'll be going business to business, probably 10 businesses a day. There just isn't the support network. There's more than enough mouths to feed. If there's a pizza shop, 2 blocks away from another, there's just no communication between, in a way, the competing businesses. Even though it shouldn't be a competition, we should be supporting one another. And if that has to be done officially with an organization, then that's what I'm going to try to develop.
Ryan Ladner?
Hey, I hear you, George. My position, I was one of the very few people in my office that had to deal with the small business tax grants. That, in my opinion, was a complete failure. The government programs at the federal level that were being offered, again, pretty much disastrous. It forced a lot of folks that maybe didn't have their books completely in order to do a lot of hoop jumping in order to get there. I remember staying up till 2 in the morning on certain calls because the deadline was coming up in order to get that $20,000 grant. But again, that still wasn't enough anyways. And so when I'm going around to a lot of the businesses, what I'm hearing is the city didn't really do much for us. In fact, it's stranger because now you're seeing a lot of the businesses that are still seeing certain types of enforcement, bylaw enforcement coming in, inspectors coming in and pointing out, well, there's a crack on the floor of the restaurant in the tile. You're going to have to redo all of the restaurant. The entire kitchen has to be redone. And these are things kind of kicking people when they're down. Yeah. And we can't have that in the city. We need to be supporting our entrepreneurs and everyone who's already been through the ringer. Yeah. So it's well put.
Thank you. Agree.
Angela Pulahese, you'd like to get involved?
Yes. Well, first of all, it's so true about small businesses because I've gone to a lot of small businesses, and I went to a small business on King Street, and this poor lady is suffering. She owns a hair salon. She can't keep her door open because she's not getting any business anymore. And this has happened all throughout Hamilton and our ward. It's a sadden because we are recovering from pandemic, but also small businesses are suffering because they can't keep their doors open. So we have to find a solution within our city to support them. Programs, resources, and whatever kind of funding we can give.
Angela, thank you very much for that response. We do appreciate it. We will continue with you now because it is your opportunity to ask a question to a candidate of your choice.
I'd like to ask it to Krista. And this is about road safety. I've been hearing so many have communicated to me about the fact that they can't ride their e-bikes, their bicycles. They don't feel safe, especially in the Queenston area, and especially with all the congestion and everything like that. So I guess my question to you is, how can we make it safe for them?
Yeah, that's a great question. It is a major concern, not just in Ward 5, but throughout the city. So, one of the things that I would like to do first is I'd like to conduct an audit of Ward 5 and look into those areas where we're having the greatest challenges with traffic safety. Now, we can make some general assumptions as far as what we're going to find. We're going to find that we're going to need protected bike lanes. We're going to find that we need pedestrian crosswalks that are accessible and safe. One thing that I'd like to implement as well, and the city's already doing this in certain locations, is I want more photo radar in place. I want people to slow down. I want speed measures in neighborhoods. That's one thing I'm hearing a lot of when I'm out canvassing, is that people are tired of cars gunning down their streets and in their neighborhoods. I'm one of those people who is tired of it as well. So I'd like to implement more speed measures throughout our neighborhoods, and then look at ways to create designated and safer pathways that take you out of the mainstream areas but still connect you to those major areas and amenities that you need to get to in the city.
Thank you very much for that. We have 2 responses to this. We will start, actually, I should say 3. Bob?
Thanks, Mike. One area that I would like to see the city take into consideration that we can do on our level is an advertising campaign to make sure to encourage people to slow down a little bit and be a bit more considerate of each other on the road. I would liken something along the lines of the Mad Canada ads that I remember when I was a kid. They were very impactful about how dangerous it was to drink and drive. Many of my generation won't even consider drinking when they're going out simply for the fact that they're concerned that I wouldn't want to be that drunk driver. I'm not going to do it. I think we need to do that same kind of thing with road safety. Perhaps if we can have those impactful ads airing on local television and putting in billboards, whatever, to target those particular audiences to encourage people to be safer and more respectful of each other on the roads.
Matt Francis, before we get to Linda. Matt.
Yeah, thank you. And road safety is obviously paramount. It's a top priority for me. I live on a busy street in the Green Hill Avenue area there, and we've got cars flying up there going, breaking the law regularly, going 70 kilometers an hour or more. And my wife and I, we won't even allow our children to play on the front yard. It's that crazy sometimes. And knocking on doors in our community, I've talked or I've listened to a lot of people that have told me the same things, and I've identified a lot of spots too. Owen Place, there's a need for a speed bump there. In front of Glendale Secondary School, there's a need for a speed bump there. Kenora Avenue, same thing. And also a four-way stop sign at Robb and Wingate in downtown Stony Creek. So we've identified, I have identified by listening to our community, talking to people, getting out there and seeing things firsthand.
Matt, we do have to move on. I'm very sorry. Linda, final word to you, and then we're going to just be able to sneak Bob's question in under the line.
Sure. I'm all for a complete streets audit, too, that Krista has mentioned, because it takes a holistic look at really figuring out where the problem areas are and prioritizing those. We need something, I've done work at Environment Hamilton on something called friendly streets. So you make the streets the safest for the most vulnerable users, children, seniors with mobility devices. I'm a cyclist, and I'll tell you, and I commute by bike, one of the most dangerous stretches of my journey is coming back into Ward 5, crossing Red Hill to get back into the neighborhood, and then moving through the neighborhood. So we are in serious need of improvements.
Bob, we are at about the 2-minute mark. Your question, and we'll try to get 1, maybe 2 responses tops.
Well, I'll let Stan answer that because he's the gentleman sitting next to me, so it's an easy enough choice. So, Stan, Ward 5 is a microcosm of the city itself. It is a blend of Old Stony Creek and the part of the former city of Hamilton. 22 years after amalgamation, there still seems to be a divide amongst the former municipalities that were amalgamated into the current city of Hamilton. How would you work to bridge that divide, to bring everyone together under the banner of the city of Hamilton?
Well, I'd start that with, especially in Ward 5, because it is multicultural, okay? I'd make everybody feel like they're VIPs, like their voice counts, okay? I've always just lived my life that way, and that you know what? We're in this together. It's we, not me. We're rowing the same boat, okay? I don't care what race, creed, color, whatever and that, okay? And that where you came from. But if you want to be a part of the community, you've got to give the people something in that they can come out to in that. Like, I think in that, okay, in that our parks aren't being utilized in that to their fullest capabilities. I think, you could have free concerts so that families could join in. I'd like to see personally in that, okay, the Lord's Day Act brought back so that Sundays, everything's closed except for the small businesses that have been suffering through the pandemic. But nobody has the gumption to address that on a federal level even.
Stan, thank you very much. We have, Ryan, I saw your hand up first before anyone else.
Next,
you get about 30 seconds.
Yeah, no, it's really quick. Like, I know people that end up developing anxiety when they have to make a commute from Stony Creek downtown to a medical appointment in the Medical Arts Building. Transit's going to improve that. We have more than just the B line to worry about. We know that the LRT is going to be going down the B line, but as people should know, BLAST stands for the various different lines, which are likely and should be BRT. I'm wrapping it up. Thank you very much.
Hey, you know what? Thank you to each of you. Very engaging, great responses, and we got everyone in under the wire, so thank you. And unfortunately, our time has run out now. Once again, our Ward 5 candidates are Sebastian Aldi, who did not communicate with us, Krista Boyer, Matt Francis, Kevin Geenan, who withdrew from the debate this afternoon, Stan Habza, Bob Hurst, Ryan Ladner, Linda Lukasic, Gordon Noble, who is unfortunately ill, we hope he gets better, Angela Pugliese, and of course, George Rusich. Remember, it's our Hamilton, it's our vote, and Election Day is October 24th. You can find everything you need to know, including a list of all of the candidates running for City Council, as well as the public and Catholic school boards on the City of Hamilton website at hamilton.ca/election. Please get out and vote, whether in person or by mail-in ballot. Then join us that evening for all your local election results. We wish you all luck. A reminder that you can find a complete schedule of all of our upcoming election debates on our website at cable14.com/elections. And we especially invite you to join us on Tuesday, September 27th, beginning at 7 p.m. It's the debate, concluding with the live mayoral debate. If you're watching us live tonight, please stay tuned for the Ward 6 debate coming up at 9 p.m. In the meantime, stay tuned for part 3 of our exclusive sit-down interview with Mayor Fred Eisenberger as he prepares to leave office. I'm Mike Fortune. See you again soon, Hamilton.
Without the program, there'd be so many more of us that are joining gangs and causing trouble and stuff like that. And especially in my family, there's a lot of that which happens. And so it was kind of if I wasn't here, we all know what would be happening right now. And so I'd say thank you for keeping it open, because it gives kids who have issues at home and stuff an outlet and a place to be where they feel comfortable and safe.
Get your phones out, Hamilton. Scan the QR code on your screen to take you directly to cable14.com, where you can find out about our shows, see our TV schedule, learn about our hosts, and so much more.
The following is a Cable 14 special presentation.
The year is 2014. Fred Eisenberger is currently the CEO of the Canadian Urban Planning Institute. I've got that right. Having spent a term as mayor of the City of Hamilton and alderman before that. And something's itching at him to get back into politics. So what was it? Was it a story, an incident, an issue that made you think about it?
It was an issue. And so, I put a lot of time and effort into what I thought was the right thing for the City of Hamilton to involve itself in, which was LRT. I don't want to wear out LRT or light rail transit, but future thinking cities need to have good public transportation. And as we're growing, and we are, and have been, and as we continue to, and looking at the Toronto experience, we want to get out ahead of the congestion that is likely to happen. So let's put in place now what will be a longer term benefit. So I just could not let go of that vision for the City of Hamilton, among other things. Waterfront development had not yet flourished to the fullness of what it is today. And so there were a number of projects that I thought we needed to continue to kind of pursue and work on, and I thought I had the right skills to be able to do that, and certainly the right knowledge. And knowledge coming from the Canadian Urban Institute didn't hurt at all. It was really kind of an affirming thing for me that I was on the right track, and that the benefits that would accrue to the City of Hamilton for projects like light rail transit and waterfront redevelopment and economic development growth were where our city needed to go. So I'm standing on the roof of my brother's house that I'm helping him build, and I get a phone call from Andrew Dreschel. And Andrew, as you recall, Andrew was the political opinion writer. And it was in and around August of that year, or maybe a little sooner. And I'm standing on the roof, take the call, and Andrew's simple question was, "Are you running for mayor?" And my answer was, yes. And
so there had been rumors. There had been rumors?
Instant, well, there had been rumors. I had been out of town for a couple of months because I was in BC helping my brother build a house. I'd taken a pause from the Urban Institute and said, I think I need to get on to something else. And that something else in my mind would have been the mayorship, but I hadn't really kind of given anybody a firm answer at that point until Andrew phoned me. And again, I'm standing on the roof and I said, yeah, I'm in.
Not like, I'll think about it and get back to you.
No, it was an automatic, largely because, I did not feel that I was finished. I did not feel that I'd accomplished what I wanted to accomplish. I did not feel that our city was on the path that I wanted it to be on. And so I'm not alone in that. I think a lot of other people shared that vision. And I wanted to ensure that that voice came to the table for the next round of elections. So I was happy to step in and very, very pleased to be successful.
Not easy to come back after being,
no,
but you were getting good at that.
Pretty rare, actually pretty rare, especially at that level. It's, and I don't, people have called me stubborn. I put it to tenacity. If you believe in something, if you keep at it and work at it, it can happen. And I think for me, it's tenacity. To the chagrin of some of my family members that might not have been too thrilled about the idea, but all the way through have said, listen, if you really believe in this, then we're behind you. And so with great support from family and friends, we were successful.
So again, LRT, you're back into that dialogue, that conversation at the political level, and where are we at this point then?
We're closing in on an announcement of funding. So during that term, the Liberal government actually said, yeah, we agree that this is the right kind of project. After, I would say, a fair bit of background work on behalf of myself and my good staff, and again, good staff in my office means everything. I've got some very, very talented people in my office that help me work through all of this. And were it not for them and their good efforts, a lot of this may not have happened. But we convinced the provincial government that Hamilton deserved to have a fully paid for light rail transit system, largely because we've had such a rough ride on the commercial industrial side. So lost jobs and lost opportunities, over the years. It's time that we got a boost, and that LRT was intended to be the boost, and it would be a boost. So employment opportunities. There's 5 or 6 years of 3,000 or 4,000 people building this LRT. There's equipment and supplies that happen, but then also the ancillary developments that come with LRT all the way up and down the corridor. So all of that leads itself to good economy for Hamilton. But unfortunately, the government changed, and we had a different government come in and had a different idea about where they wanted to go, and unfortunately canceled the project for a period of time. So, since then, it's been work with the Minister Mulroney, who was originally the one that canceled the project.
Yes.
But came back around to understanding and appreciating the value of the investment. And their commitment was that we're going to look for a different funding model. In other words, we're going to try and bring the federal government into this project, which is exactly what they've done. And true to their word, the Premier said he was going to help me get this project back on track, and they did.
And that's where we are. So while this was going on, you got involved in a $50 million anti-poverty housing fund, which is so relevant when it comes to what's been happening in our city today in the last couple of years.
Yeah, and if there's one other thing that I'm proud of is that, having come from geared to income and knowing and understanding what a hand up and a help up means for a lot of families out there, I really saw this as an opportunity to look for ways and means where we can pull together, a $50 million 10-year fund that help inspire new housing opportunities, and that's exactly what's happened. But the pandemic and the explosion in the housing cost market has really taken it to a whole other level. So more is going to be needed. But at the time of our putting together this package, it was critically important and has made a huge difference in the lives of many, many, many people. So very proud of that one, based on where I come from, and I think the recipients of that would have been varied. But when you're an immigrant family that understands what that means to get assistance, especially on the housing side, which is one of the most critical pieces then and now, makes such a difference for people to help stabilize their lives and get on to better things for them and their families. So it was a real great opportunity to do something significant in that space.
We see so many construction cranes on the horizon, probably more than I've ever seen in all the years I've lived in Hamilton. And it's just the supply chain shortages that seems to be protracting everything, and everyone's anxious, and it's hard to find the patience sometimes for the people in need of housing, the people who are having issues with homelessness and poverty and mental illness, of course.
Yeah, it's an enduring challenge for sure. This is not one that is new to this era, quite frankly. It's been around a long, long time, but much more prevalent in terms of it's much more visible today. There's an emboldenment to this that didn't happen before. But the reality is the numbers are similar to what's been happening over the decades, and there's reason to be helpful. And so we've made an application to the province of Ontario for the mental health and addiction supports. So even though you may have housing availability for some folks that are homeless, many of them have mental health and addiction issues. And if you don't deal with that, then their time in that space, that whatever they're going to occupy, is very limited. They need the public health supports for addictions and mental health to be successfully moved into a more stable living environment. So we've got that application in with the province of Ontario, and hopefully they'll come through and understand that it's an opportunity to save money, quite frankly.
And lives.
And lives. The bottom line is lives, for sure.
Yes.
That's really why you're doing it. But while you're doing it,
Absolutely.
you're reducing policing costs, you're reducing paramedics costs, you're reducing hospital care costs. Because if you can get them, and my understanding is that 80% of these folks that get these wraparound supports do not go back to the challenges they were facing before. And so you eliminate all of that other costs and all that other space. So McMaster is a partner in this, and they're going to be, as well as both of our hospital networks and the Community Foundation and the city. And the analysis will be, how much money are we saving as a result of this? Does it not make sense to do the upfront investment rather than waiting for all of these bad things to happen?
Absolutely.
Let's try and prevent them so that folks can have their lives saved and get on with a better life.
Putting the services in place
Right.
once they do get the housing.
Yep.
So it's 2018, and another election is coming along, and you're still not finished.
No, and an LRT is not finished. So I got a little ahead of myself because the project is not yet canceled. It's funded, and I want it to continue.
Yes.
And then during that term is when this government decides to put the cancellation in. So this one became a referendum on LRT. There was one other candidate, Mr. Sgro, that decided that he was going to take an anti-LRT approach. And I was grateful for probably having the highest vote count ever in a Hamilton municipal election in terms of for mayor.
Twice the votes that you're
70,000 votes. I was very grateful for. That certainly helped us impress upon the provincial government that LRT is important to Hamilton, and it's important to Hamiltonians, and it's important to the future of our city. And that certainly helped us convince the federal government that that's something that they should also invest in on behalf of the Hamilton community. So that has come to pass.
And they didn't stop Fred's train.
No,
They didn't stop Fred's train.
Well, it's not my train, and hopefully it'll be everybody's train. And I was in Ottawa recently, with their LRT, notwithstanding, everything you hear about some of the challenges they've had. the LRT is spectacular. And it's wonderful to use. It's very busy, and it takes a lot of traffic off the roads.
And the investment that's come along the route as a result. What about the pushback? What do you say to the people that are still saying it's a waste of money, I'll never use it? Do you just let it stand for what it is?
They will use it. It's got greater, broader benefit through the entire city. Redeveloping downtown and getting more housing built is a benefit for everybody. Having less congestion in our city is a benefit for everybody. More jobs and employment opportunities in our city is a benefit for everybody. So everybody in the city gets the benefit. And as is the experience in Kitchener-Waterloo, when they introduced their LRT, they had some $3 billion of new housing development opportunities come as a result of that. That's a significant tax benefit for the city of Hamilton, all in the inner city, so no sprawl, in a place where the existing infrastructure already exists or can be improved. And that's certainly what's going to happen here in Hamilton. So there's nothing but good that comes out of this transportation opportunity. Folks that let's say, look, I'll never use it. Even though you'll never use it, you're still going to get benefit from it for yourself or for your children or for your grandchildren. They're going to get benefit out of this LRT no matter what.
Then the pandemic comes along. So from one challenge to a big one, and that really dominated much of this particular term, didn't it?
Yeah, pretty much. 3 years of challenge, and it was the biggest challenge that we faced as a city, a country, a province, a world, quite frankly. Yeah. So, the mantra was, we're all in this together, and that's invariably true, but every municipality, every city, every community had to figure out how they were going to manage this. And I'm really grateful for some great, talented leadership of many, many people in our city and community, and the support that we got in the broader community, asking them to do things that right now I almost feel surreal. Yes, we ask people to not go outside. We ask people to not go and visit a friend or a neighbor or a family member. We ask people to not go to a park. We shut down all of our recreation facilities. We shut down all of our ice hockey facilities. Nobody did anything. That's surreal. But the reality was, it was all geared towards saving lives and keeping people safe. And through public health and the great work of public health teams and immunology, we seconded some 400 city staff from their regular duties to the vaccination process to help facilitate getting people vaccinated when it was available, and there was a time when that wasn't available. And for my role, it was about communicate. So I wanted to be sure that people understood that their government was still functioning, that I was there every day, as was public health and many other people, even though we might have been virtual, that we were working every day to put the right measures in place to keep people safe and continue to provide the kind of necessary supports that our community was going to need. So yeah, it was a humongous challenge. Were it not for our collective effort, and I'm not taking any responsibility for that, it's everybody. Everybody had anxiety, everybody had challenges through this process.
Shortages
everybody
of staff.
Had worries of are things going to get better? Are my kids going to be okay? What about my children and my grandchildren? But at the end of the day, we all came through it, and with huge collaboration between federal, provincial, and municipal governments, and to the like of which I've never seen in my entire 25-year career of involvement. That coming together was so critically important that we were unified in terms of the approaches that we were taking. So I hope that continues, even though this pandemic is, hopefully on the wane. That level of collaboration was so beneficial and positive, and that's the way government should work.
There's a system now. There's a system in place to deal with what happens from this day forward. Regrets. You've had a few.
Don't make me sing the song.
From Frank Sinatra.
I did it my way.
The Red Hill Parkway, the big inquiry. You've said you kind of feel like you regretted going there.
I regret the cost.
Yeah.
Judicial inquiry is the most open and transparent process you could possibly have. But we don't control the cost, and the cost has gotten, excessively high. It's, the original estimates were $2 to $7 million, and here we are at $30 million. So I don't regret the fact that we're having this inquiry. I just regret the fact that it's gotten so costly. The inquiry is fine. People need to understand and appreciate that there was a report. Council actually never ever sees those kinds of reports. Consultants' reports are not something that goes to council. So someone decided to, in their judgment, look at this report and say it wasn't conclusive. And then the question today is, should more have been done, or should it have been followed up on? And that's what the inquiry is going to be all about.
Well, this plus the sewer gate, the waste that was released into Shadow Creek and the costs involved there, a lot of that has been described as transparency issues. What do you feel about that? I mean, there are certain things that we can't make public, I know, when it comes to personnel and certain things like that. Where are you when it comes to public figures and transparency?
I want to be and have been as transparent as humanly possible. So when it comes to some legal matters or some potential charges, whatever they may be, or contracts, those are matters that need to be held privately until they're resolved. And every council is going to have challenges. I mean, full stop. All the councils that I've been involved with have had challenges. Amalgamation was a challenge. LRT has been a challenge. And so the question is, do you deal with them? And each and every one of them has been dealt with, and a course of action has been taken. And I'm quite comfortable with my role in all of them.
Good to hear. Decorum on council. Do we need more? Do we need more rules? We talked a little bit about that when it came to the Integrity Commissioner. Are people just getting kind of antsy because of the pandemic? Do you see a change in behavior levels at this level?
Not by and large.
Okay.
When I think of it, it's a place where you're supposed to debate things. And 99% of the time we're in agreement on most issues, maybe 95% of the time. And the other 5% leads to some sort of debate, which is what you're supposed to be doing when you're an elected member. You're supposed to be debating the issues. Sometimes, very rarely, but sometimes it gets a little heated, and that attracts attention, and people say things that they probably ought not to. But that's very rare, very rare. So this whole notion of dysfunction, I think, is a misnomer. I've really not experienced it to any great degree. Have there been moments in time where you kind of go, well, this was not our best moment? Yeah, of course. But that's the nature of debate and discussion and public discourse. And
humanity.
God knows that, if we're all vanilla, and we all agreed all the time, then we would be labeled too boring and not dynamic enough, which I've been labeled with a few times, quite frankly, that he's not aggressive enough, and he's not this, or he's not that. I think it functions well. It's a far sight better than what you see on a question period in the federal house or in the provincial house. We are very civilized compared to that. And public discourse, it should be sometimes heated, but agreeable, and hopefully come to a conclusion that we can all move forward on.
When we come back after this last break, we're coming up to the year 2022 and the big decision. Mm-hmm. When we come back.
We are the Elections Ambassadors, and we have spent the past 8 weeks visiting 96 locations across the city. We've been engaging with members of the community about the upcoming municipal elections on October 24th, 2022.
Over this time, we've heard from many of you with some frequently asked questions.
Today, we'll be answering those questions. This year, we have 157 polling stations on Election Day.
Eligible voters in Hamilton will elect these offices: Mayor, 15 City Councilors, 11 English Public School Board Trustees, 9 English Catholic School Board Trustees, 1 French Public School Board Trustee, and 1 French Catholic School Board Trustee.
You are eligible to vote this October if you are a Canadian citizen, are at least 18 years old, reside in Hamilton, or are the owner or tenant of land in Hamilton, or the spouse of such owner or tenant, and are not prohibited from voting.
You can check to see if you're on the voters list or add yourself to the voters list online by visiting hamilton.ca/elections or by calling 905-546-4365.
Advanced poll dates are going to be held on October 7th, 8th, 14th, and 15th.
To receive a ballot, eligible voters must present a piece of identification showing their name and address, or complete a statutory declaration that they are an eligible voter. A list of acceptable forms of identification can be found by visiting hamilton.ca/elections.
If you're eligible to vote, but your name does not appear on the voters list and you do not have a permanent lodging place or fixed address on Election Day, you can complete an application to amend voters list at the polling station. You can use the address or the area where you've been sleeping the past 5 weeks before the election.
If you require assistance at the polling station, you can bring a friend along to help you or ask an election official on site for assistance. Your assistant may go behind the voting screen with you. However, they must make an oral declaration first.
If you are a student going to school and living in Hamilton but consider your home to be the place where you live while you are not attending school, you are eligible to vote in both your home municipality and in Hamilton, where you currently live while attending school.
All polling stations are accessible and are equipped with magnifying sheets, additional seating, and accommodations for assistance. Additionally, 15 polling stations, 1 polling station in each ward, are equipped with an accessible tabulator for individuals who require additional assistance to vote.
We hope that this has been helpful.
Remember to vote in the municipal election this October.
We look forward to seeing you there.
If you have any questions or want to learn more, visit hamilton.ca/elections.
Did you know that a second of fun in the wrong place could change your life forever? Lots of kids in our child amputee program lost their limbs in accidents. Now, we help kids to play safe by sharing our stories and spreading our safety message. Take it from us. We've been through it. Accidents can happen to anyone, anywhere.
Don't let it happen to you.
Spot the danger before you play. Play safe.
Telling Tales invites you to open a book, open a world at Royal Botanical Gardens. Come and celebrate stories and nature with Canada's leading children's authors, illustrators, and storytellers in the enchanting rose gardens of Hendry Park. Book lovers of all ages will be engaged with workshops, literary characters, music, and so much fun packed into each day. Visit Telling Tales to register now.
Women are builders.
Women build leaders. Women build innovation. Women build each other up. YWCA Hamilton hasn't stopped building. Now we need you to help us build a Hamilton first. Affordable housing for women and children. Together, we will build the future. Because women build Hamilton.
Upper Canada, 1793.
I don't care what the law is. I will never be a slave. That word, I hate it. It rests on my tongue like rot.
Peter, how does it feel to get paid for your work?
There are rumors freedom's coming for us all.
Freedom, you know that's all I want.
Chloe, careful. Real men would rather sell you across the river to America than let you go free.
Then I'll run.
Later, Chloe hangs laundry.
I've run before. Maybe this time for good.
She's forcefully seized by white loyalists.
Just get her into the boat, now!
Peter chases after them.
Chloe? Chloe, no!
Chloe's restrained, then taken away in a rowboat. Historica Canada.
Word of Chloe Cooley's resistance led to Canada's first legislation limiting slavery. After 200 years, slavery was abolished in Canada in 1834.
Get your phones out, Hamilton. Scan the QR code on your screen to take you directly to cable14.com, where you can find out about our shows, see our TV schedule, learn about our hosts, and so much more.
Adele is one of our current staff members. She had a rough, challenged life, and it was because of your support that made that difference. She is now on the right track, continuing her education, going into a college, looking into the field of child and youth, and it's because you made that difference. So I want you to continue to donate to the United Way of
The following is a Cable 14 special presentation.
The city of Hamilton is situated upon the traditional territories of the Erie, Neutral, Huron-Wendat, Haudenosaunee, and Mississaugas. This land is covered by the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Belt Covenant, which was an agreement between the Haudenosaunee and the Anishinaabe to share and care for the resources around the Great Lakes. We further acknowledge that this land is covered by the Between the Lakes Purchase in 1792 between the Crown and the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. Today, the city of Hamilton is home to many Indigenous people from across Turtle Island, known as North America. And we recognize that we must do more to learn about the rich history of this land so that we can better understand our roles as residents, neighbors, partners, and caretakers. Hello and welcome to Our Hamilton, Our Vote, the 2022 municipal election debates presented live by Cable 14 in partnership with our friends at the Hamilton Spectator. I'm Mike Fortune, and once again, I will be your moderator. For this debate, we have invited the candidates for councillor in Ward 6 to join us. All of them are here in studio with us. We have Tom Jackson, the incumbent, Dan Preston, Donna Padu, Stefan Spolnick, and wrapping up our lineup tonight,
Chris Sly. Thank you all very much for taking the time to join us. We know how busy your schedules are. Our format includes 2 minutes each for the candidates to introduce themselves. Then our local media panel will be posing questions. Viewers at home, if you are watching our live broadcast, please send us a tweet at Cable14 or email your question to election@cable14.com to share any question you would like to ask of these candidates. And finally, we will wrap up the hour with an open forum for the candidates to question and respond to each other. All candidates were provided copies of the debate format in advance, so they are fully aware of how the next hour will go. Of course, I will be doing my best to keep us on track with what's expected for each section and how we are doing for time. So, without further delay, let's get started with our 2-minute introductory statements. If needed, you will get a 10-second warning before I call time. Up first, Tom Jackson.
Thank you, Cable 14. Having lived on the East Mountain 39 years, I understand the needs and concerns and desires of the residents of Ward 6. Over the last 4 years, we have accomplished many things, including much-needed infrastructure renewal in several neighborhoods, including Lisgar, Highview, Trenholm. New playgrounds at Bobby Kerr and Lisgar Parks, with monies earmarked for new playgrounds at Eleanor, Broughton East, and Hampton. $7.5 million for Phase 2 reconstruction of concession Mountain Brow Boulevard, including an expanded multi-use path. $27 million for expansion at Macassa Lodge. Opening the Pritchard Rail Trail extension. Preservation of Broughton East Park, finally. Strong support and implementation of many traffic safety initiatives, including permanent photo radar, many new speed cushions, installation of digital signs, pedestrian crossings on Pritchard and the Brow, the construction of a pedestrian signal at the traffic island of Fennel, and I advocated for 18 new traffic safety officers. Also, Mountain Drive Park will have a $2 million redevelopment. I successfully fought for $6 million to remove contaminated soil found near the Kenilworth Reservoir that provides pristine drinking water to the entire mountain. I have, with my tri-party approach, always ensured citizen engagement on issues critical to Ward 6. I love serving and helping people. My mantra has consistently been to improve the quality of life for the people I represent. My fierce advocacy for Ward 6 will never waver. With continued support by you, the residents of Ward 6, I would be honored to be part of our city's dynamic future with experienced leadership that comes with full-time plus accessibility, dedication, enthusiasm, and utmost integrity. Thank you.
Thank you for that opening statement to Mr. Jackson. We will now continue on with candidate Preston. You have 2 minutes.
Hello, Hamilton, and thank you, Mike. Thank you, Cable 14, Matt from CH and the Spec, the viewers at home, the 9 candidates that put up their name for mayor, the over 80 councillors that are running in Hamilton, the 50 school board trustees, and a special thank you to Tom Jackson, who has run since 1988. I think it's your 9th term, so 34 years. Thank you, Tom. Thank you. I'm not going to pull any punches. Let's be honest. I believe in less government. Less government, as in we have too many people in council right now. They're too divided. We have wards that have different needs everywhere. We hear the story about the LRT. You know, Glanbrook doesn't want the LRT. You know, Ancaster doesn't want the LRT. Guess what? It's coming. But everybody has their special little place. But with 15 councillors, that's way too many. They're too divided. We need to get that number down to 15, or down to 11 with 1 mayor and 10 councillors. And we need to create a team. Currently, it doesn't work. It's not working. It hasn't worked. By the time 2051 comes, we're going to have an estimated 800,000 people in the city. That would mean, based on the demographics, we will need 22 new councillors. Ford will put in a superpower for the city, like they're going to do in Toronto and they're going to do in Ottawa. We need to reduce that number down to 11. Thank you.
Candidate Preston, thank you very much for that. Our time has just run out. I'm very sorry.
I'm sorry.
You'll have more time later.
Okay,
That's okay. I promise you. We will now move on to opening statements from candidate Donna Padu.
Thank you, Mike. And I'd like to thank Cable 14 and the viewers for tuning in. I was born in this great city. I have worked, volunteered, supported Hamiltonians. I have lived in Ward 6 for 30 years. I am running as your Ward 6 councillor because we need change. As I said, I have lived in Ward 6 for 30 years, about the same amount of time Tom's been the councillor, but I've had almost no information or communication from Tom in those 30 years, and that's not acceptable to me. I'm hearing at the doors our community members need and want to be informed. They want their concerns heard, and they want to be part of the solution. I will be there to listen. I believe in transparency and open communication. To do that, I offer several platforms, including social media, for constituents to communicate with me. I am not afraid of meaningful criticism and dialogue. It will only serve to make me or allow me to do a better job for my constituents. Hamilton is a united city, and it has to work together for all Hamiltonians. Not in this current isolation of wards that we see now. I will make positive change to this city and to Ward 6 when I'm elected on October 24th. My passion and my driving force. My passion is my driving force. You only need to speak to my family and about the hours and commitment I put into everything I do. Through my years of volunteering, chairing youth and other organizations, which I have won awards for my recognition and service. I have been a business owner, an entrepreneur, served my community as a constituency affairs manager, where I have been acutely exposed to the needs of Hamiltonians and have worked to serve those needs. I have found solutions that are effective and acted on those solutions. My skill...
Donna, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
It has come to an end. We will now move on to Stefan Spolnick.
Hello, and thank you for having me this evening. My name is Stefan Spolnick, and I'm running for Ward 6 Council. I was born and raised here in the city, growing up on Sunning Hill in Ward 6, and currently residing in Ward 3. I'm a paramedic here in the city and for Six Nations of the Grand River. I've worked at both Stelco and Dofasco in their primary departments, and was an Argyll and Southern Highlander of Canada at the Armories on James Street. In my free time, I'm heavily involved in the community, adopting Burge Park with my partner Taylor, organizing several neighborhood cleanups in partnership with Beautiful Alleys and Sea and Rail, implementing pollinator gardens, inventorying trees with neighborhood associations, and I'm a member of the Heritage Permit Subcommittee. In all these ways, I serve my community, but I know I can do more, and that's why I'm running for wards or for City Council. If elected, I will bring my honesty, passion, and transparency to the council table, so scandals like the Red Hill Valley Parkway and the Shadow Creek spill are not suppressed from our community. I would continue to be engaged, active, and involved with the residents of Ward 6 to ensure your concerns are heard by fellow councillors and addressed. And I will make evidence-based decisions when voting on important matters by listening to city staff and expert consultants. On October 24th, vote Stefan Spolnick, and together we can build a city everyone can be proud to call their home. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Stefan, thank you very much for that opening statement. We'll now move on to my right here, Chris Sly. You are up.
Thanks, Mike. My name's Chris Sly. First and foremost, I'm a proud father of two amazing boys and a husband to my wonderful wife, Heather. My family's given me the strength to run in this election and to be here today, so I just want to thank them for that. Like all parents, my hope is that my children can safely walk to school, make friends with people of all backgrounds and cultures, and that when they grow up, they can afford to stay and live in the city that they grew up in. I've had the pleasure of knocking on doors over the past few years and meeting so many incredible Hamiltonians during provincial and federal elections. But one thing has become very clear to me. Too many people are struggling. Our seniors are deciding between rent payments, medicine, and groceries. Young people are stranded at home with no way of taking their next steps in life, as market rents have skyrocketed to over $1,700 a month for a one-bedroom. Most vulnerable people on Ontario Works and ODSP cannot find places to live with the resources they're given. The system is handing them an anchor instead of a life vest. If market housing could fix the situation we were in, it would have done so already. The crisis is not only one of low-income people, but middle-income and modest-income people as well. Hamiltonians are doing the right things. They're working hard, they're building their communities, they're building the economy, but they're met with out-of-reach house prices and out-of-control rent prices. We need massive investments in public geared to income housing as a large portion of all future development. City Council should be ashamed of the state of public housing has fallen into, and we have created a stigma that does not exist in many parts of the world, as huge percentages of the populations grow up in government subsidized housing that is high quality. Everyone deserves dignity, and we can and do much better. We have so many talented people working at City Hall. What we need is councillors that have a real vision. Like all entrepreneurs who start their own business, you must possess the ability to see something that is not there, explain it to other people and have them believe it, and follow through, which is the most important part. I have done this with my small business, and I would bring these skills to City Hall. Thank you very much for your consideration.
To all of our candidates, thank you very much for those opening statements. We do appreciate it. And now the fun begins. Of course, our local media panel is with us once again, and it's been great all week. With us for this debate is Matthew Van Dongen from the Hamilton Spectator, and of course from CHCH News, Mr. Matt Ingram. Each of our reporters will be choosing a candidate to answer a question, and then other candidates can ask to respond. Make sure you indicate quickly if you would like to get involved. All of our responses will be limited to 1 minute. I will give a warning when our time has run out. Our first question comes from the Hamilton Spectator's Matthew Van Dongen. Take it away, my man.
Thanks very much. And folks, thanks for having me. I'm going to direct this question first to Tom, but I'd love to hear anyone else who wanted to weigh in. The news story that seemed to rile our readers the most last council term was about a massive sewage spill into Shit Oak Creek. People seem to be particularly upset that the city chose not to share the details of how much sewage was spilled and over what time period until they were forced to. So looking back, Tom, as a councillor, do you think there is anything that you could or should have done differently?
Thank you for the question, Matthew. I was as angry as anyone when I heard about the 4.5 years that a gate was open. Frankly, 2 gates were open, and that all we were doing was down at the Woodward Avenue treatment plant, some SCADA monitoring system was all that we were relying on across our 70 sites of combined sewer overflow tanks and or water treatment facilities or reservoirs. I was angry as could be. In the summer of 18, when we heard this, we immediately instructed staff, put up signs, no swimming, no canoeing, no drinking of the water at Shit Oak, alert the MOE for the investigation to go. Illegal advice at that time told us to not jeopardize the investigation that would be forthcoming, to ensure that there would put some protection to the liability of the corporation. We weren't to say any more. Ironically, the council of 2018 that I was on voted unanimously to accept that legal advice. 6 months later, the new council of the day, with 1/3 council members being brand new, they voted unanimously the same way to accept what now in hindsight was flawed legal advice. That's all I could say at this time. Most importantly, we're spending millions of dollars to properly rehabilitate, dredge, and clean up Shit Oak Creek.
Tom, thanks
Thank
for that
you.
response. Donna, I know you want to get involved.
Yeah, so what I want to know is why no one bothered to check. There were numerous complaints about the garbage, the smell, but no one, Tom, not even you, went to see what was going on. And this could have been minimized in 2015 when Kristen Velbrun and Wendy Bush spent 3 days floating in a raft in Hamilton Harbor to draw the city's attention to the neglect of the water in the shorelines. It was in the paper, it was in the news, and unless you lived in a vacuum, you knew about it. I was even more upset because knowing my son was down there in 2015 volunteering, picking up garbage, cleaning up the creek, but he wasn't wading in water. He was wading in raw sewage. It is a problem when it's covered up, but it's also a problem when you ignore the community concerns, and that's what happened.
Am I allowed to respond? Sure. Thank you very much, and thank you, Donna, for expressing those concerns. All I can say is council was apprised fully in camera in the summer of 18 of the 4.5 years that the gate was open. I didn't leave the gate open. It was a travesty to begin with. It was my motion in 2019, though, Donna, that got council's unanimous support to say, that's it. We're not relying on that SCADA monitoring system anymore. It was my motion to hire 5 new inspectors to do typical, traditional boots on the ground, clipboard, annual regular inspections of all these sites. I was appalled to hear that we didn't have regular inspections. And so it was my motion that got unanimous support. I was pleased for that, for an extra check and balance on the creeks and on the combined sewer overflow areas. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Mike. I have a hard time believing that for the majority of councillors, it wasn't about protecting themselves for the 2018 election. They said it was about, there was a potential $6 million fine from the province that had them all worried. But what Hamiltonian wouldn't have paid $10 to find out the truth? For the cost of a few newspapers, we were all buying like crazy anyways because we were trying to figure out what was going on. I think it speaks to the true intentions of the majority of the last council, who were looking out for themselves above all else. And I think this tendency to go in camera is just a thing that's just used too much with the current council.
Can I respond, please, Mike, again?
You will get final word before we move on to our next question.
Thank you, Chris. I appreciate as well your comments. And all I want to say is that overall with the Chedeau Creek issue, lessons have been learned. And don't forget, in the summer of 18, in spite of what some of my challengers are saying, there were media headlines, including in The Spectator, saying Chedeau Creek spill, that sewage was flowing into Chedeau Creek. So there were headlines, there were publicity stories at that time as well. It had nothing to do, in my humble opinion, I say this sincerely, with the election. Again, the same two councils, 6 months later, voted exactly the same way, taking the flawed legal advice. Thank you.
Hot topic. We do have to continue on with our partners at CHCH. Mr. Matt Ingram, all yours.
Thanks very much, Mike. Thanks for having me tonight. My question is for you, Stefan. Just kind of keeping up with the theme of this conversation, concerns about transparency at City Hall. You had mentioned something about that in your opening statement. I'm wondering what your ideas are for increasing transparency at City Hall.
Well, I believe that as a council, we need to stop the in-camera sessions, or I just don't know what type of precedent that sets when everyone voted unanimously to suppress that information. I was down at the Bayfront during that time, and we had noticed that there was an increase in garbage and sewage, didn't know what it was coming from, and was shocked to find out that it was an actual leak. Now, I don't know how that leak happened, but I feel that there just needs to be more integrity at City Hall, and you have to do what's right rather than what will protect you legally.
Chris?
Yeah, thanks, Mike. I definitely agree, Stefan. Clearly, Hamiltonians have lost a lot of trust in City Hall. We need councillors that are utilizing all the technology that they have and social media that we have at Bay to connect with their residents on a consistent weekly basis to tell us what's going on. These formats should be easily open to questions as well. We also need localized organizations in each neighborhood so that we can connect better with our citizens. I find that the people that live in the neighborhoods know what's best for their neighborhoods. Thanks.
Chris, thank you very much for that. Final comment from anyone? Yes, Tom, I'll give you last word.
Thank you, Mike, and thank you, Chris and Stefan, for your comments about transparency. I truly believe transparency and accountability is utmost important. My integrity and my name is the most important thing I own. I love looking after the people of Ward 6. Chris, to your point, I have set up a multitude of neighborhood associations, task forces, citizens committees, because I love engagement. I always have. And at times, at City Hall, there are insurers, there is legal advice on certain matters in order to protect the corporation, that at least you have to listen to it in camera, but ultimately the decision is ours. And wherever we can, as much as possible, share with the public exactly all the information we can. I do, and we do. Thank you.
And because that was actually Stefan's question, we will give you the final word if you would like, sir. You're all good? Okay, no worries, my friend. No worries. Hey, not only is our local media panel here, we are also getting questions from our viewers at home, and some of them have already been submitted. Thank you for doing so by tweeting us at Cable14 or emailing them to election@cable14.com. Most recent one that has come in, we've had scandals upon scandals in City Hall, from the Red Hill to Coots Paradise to a whole racism inquiry in our school board. How do you plan to bring improved equity and transparency to Hamilton City Hall? I'm sensing a theme here, and I am seeing that this question is going to be asked to Dan Preston. Dan.
Wow, good question. I was busy writing something down.
Would you like me to repeat the question?
Yeah, please.
If you don't mind.
I was in a train of thought.
Yep, no worries at all. I have the copy here as well. We've had scandals upon scandals in City Hall, from the Red Hill to Coots Paradise to a whole racism inquiry in our school board. How do you plan to bring improved equity and transparency to Hamilton City Hall?
Well, transparency should be a given. We shouldn't have closed door meetings. We shouldn't be doing that. Everything should be on board. That's my answer.
Fair enough. Anybody else like to jump in on this? Please, Chris.
Yeah, thank you, Mike. I think one thing we can all agree on is we want more transparency. The Red Hill inquiry, for example, there's a lot of concerns about cost and why it's being dragged on for so long. I think at the end of the day, there is a communication breakdown between City Hall and the residents, and I think what most people are asking for is just more communication, accessible communication. Like to Tom's point earlier, he said that there are these committees in local. Where are they? Like, how are we finding out about these? If people don't know that they exist, then they might as well not exist. Thank you.
Donna.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. We need to be more transparent, and we need to have avenues where our constituents can come and talk to us. Open door. We work for them. That's our job. You know, it's ridiculous that they cannot communicate with us, and I am absolutely advocating for open door policy, complete transparency, complete communication, and having solutions be a combined effort with constituents and council table. Thank you.
Janet Jackson.
Yes, I'm surprised that both Chris and Donna are looking for more transparency, and not just more transparency, but more engagement from the local councillor. Quite frankly, I've been honored to represent the East Mountain for over 30 years. I don't recall either one of them being involved in any of the neighborhood associations. I do so many on-site visits with my constituents, whether it's an individual matter, whether it's a street matter, whether it's a neighborhood matter. I love engaging with people. That has been exactly what I do. And also I want to say with the Red Hill Valley Parkway inquiry, I voted for the inquiry because of transparency and accountability. We could have taken an easier way out by doing just an external legal counsel that could have done just interviews behind closed doors. I voted for the transparency and for the full inquiry, and I was bringing issues to the table long before we heard of the mystery report. Thank you.
Donna?
So I just want to say that, you know, I've been involved in the schools in Ward 6. I've volunteered constantly in Ward 6 with youth groups, organizations. I've been engaged in the community organizations. I've been knocking on hundreds of thousands of doors all across Hamilton Mountain. I've been there. I've been there for 30 years. I've done a lot of work, raised a lot of money. But like with Tom, I've had one flyer from Tom in my mailbox. In 2018, when the election took place, I met Tom in Food Basics, and I said to him, Tom, you've never been to my door, not once. He showed up at my door, but that's it. Thank you.
Donna, thank you very much for that. Final word before we move on to our next question. Final word does go to you, candidate Preston, if you like.
I'm going to agree with Tom on this one. Tom, I know his history. I know he's probably the one counselor that's hit every single meeting. He's probably got the best attendance record. I have no issue with Tom. I have an issue the way government runs. That's it. Simple. I want a recall vote. I want referendums. I want surveys, and I want. Sorry, I'm getting tied up. I'm trying to think of my questions here. I want just for. I'm lost. I'm lost for words. I'm
no
sorry.
worries. We will move
it's
on.
Okay.
we will move on. Thank you for that. He's back from the Hamilton Spectator. Matthew Van Dongen, take it away.
Thanks again. I will give this one to Chris. I've heard this one come up at other debates, and I'm fascinated by all the different opinions, so I'll throw it out there because it's relevant for Ward 6 as well. Do you think the city should be widening the Red Hill and the Link?
Absolutely. I think we have to be serious. We just declared a climate emergency, and I think it's very important to, above all else, massively consider other options before adding wider lanes to the roads, because with wider lanes, we get more cars. We want to invest in public transit. We want more people to be riding the HSR. And I think expanding the Red Hill is a step potentially in the wrong direction.
Thank you for that. I saw Tom would like to get involved with this.
I would. So we just passed a new revised master truck route plan, which now is using the Link and the Red Hill Valley Parkway as part of a ring road concept. So imagine, I'm helping now downtown neighborhoods to get 18-wheelers, 5-axle trucks out of their lovely neighborhoods, off the dangerous streets, the main arteries of the downtown. And even environmentalists now said we need to adopt and use the ring road concept, which includes Red Hill and the Link. I've been a strong supporter of both roads. I am a strong supporter of expanding both. Both roads were intended to be 6 lanes from the beginning. The government of the day, the NDP back in the 90s, kiboshed the Red Hill. We had to quickly make changes, and we got the Link built first in 97, then the Red Hill in 07. 70,000 vehicles a day use those 2 roads. Imagine if we never had those roads, 70,000 vehicles would be back on the Mohawks, Lime Ridges, Stone Churches, and Rymos. Thank you.
Stefan.
Well, I don't think that we should add more asphalt to the Red Hill Valley and the Link, but I think that maybe in the future, the LRT could be expanded to both of those corridors, which I think would be beneficial for the environment and the residents of Ward 6 and Stony Creek.
Thank you for that. I'm looking around here. Chris, I'll give you final word as the question was to you.
Thank you. Just like Stefan was saying, for me, the LRT is the new beginning that will allow us to rethink our transit in the city. We need to rethink every inch of our city and how we can get more people using our transit systems instead of doubling down on a future that is not sustainable. It's not the sexiest answer in the world, but history provides us with a roadmap. Creating a sustainable neighborhoods with fast, reliable, clean, and affordable access to transit that can get our residents where they need to go. That is a solution we need to focus on to meet our growth demands over the next 30 years and to simultaneously tackle the climate crisis. And I love the idea of an LRT link up the Red Hill. Thanks.
Thank you very much for that, Chris. So we'll continue on now. Matt Ingram, he's back.
Thanks, Mike. My question is for you, Donna. I'm wondering, Bob Bertina has a suggestion that when the LRT is built, that it should be completely maintained and operated by HSR as opposed to having any Metrolinx workers doing that. What are your thoughts on that?
So, frankly, if we allow LRT to be privately operated, we have no control over costs. My grandfather worked for the HSR. He lived here in this city. He raised his family here. He shopped here. He spent his money here. He paid his taxes here. There is more to consider than signing on to the lowest bidder. And I fully support keeping the running of the LRT public in Hamilton by Hamiltonians.
Chris.
I 100% agree with Donna. The HSR should remain in, the HSR should run the LRT, and it should remain in public hands. It's important that we address the topic of competitive bidding too, I think. When it comes to our vital services in Hamilton, in order for a private company to turn a profit for their shareholders, there must either be a reduction in wages for our local workers, reduced maintenance of the LRT, both proactive and reactive, or a reduced schedule of operation. I cannot consider any of these to be good things for the taxpayer. You get what you pay for, and we want strong local jobs and an LRT that's the primary function and is on service delivery and not on turning a profit for shareholders. Thank you.
Mr. Jackson?
I strongly support as well the ATU operating the LRT line. Ironically, I wanted the $3.4 billion. My preference would have been to expand the conventional public transit system, our HSR, from coast to coast to coast in our city, from Winona to Flamborough, from the lake to Mount Hope, better running, better dependable times, connectivity in between. I wanted to use that money to electrify the entire 300 fleet buses in our inventory to finally build the second bus barn downtown of $300 million. Unfortunately, I was in the minority vote. The LRT has been decided. ATU has to operate it. That's the only way to go. Thank you.
Donna, final word to you.
No, I absolutely agree. ATU has to operate it, and as what Chris was saying, absolutely, we need to examine those costs. That if it was in the public hand, we don't know where it's going to go, and they are going to cut, and we can't cut corners. It's no, it's absolutely imperative.
Thank you all for participating in the media panel portion of our questions. Greatly appreciated, and that's all the time we have. We will be moving on. Of course, thanks to our media panel. I got to say that too. Matthew and Matt, great job as always. Appreciate you coming into our studios tonight. Now on to our open forum, where we will give as many candidates as we can a minute to direct a question to one other candidate. That candidate will have a chance to respond, and then we will open up the floor for other brief comments. I will let you know when your time requires us to move on. We drew numbers earlier this evening ahead of the broadcast to determine the order for this segment. Candidate Dan Preston, you are up first. Your question, who you're directing it to, please.
Well, obviously my question is going to be directed to Tom. Do you believe in term limits? Do you believe in recall vote and referendums?
So, Dan, let me say sincerely, I find I am against term limits. Obviously, I have a built-in bias, but I'm against term limits for two reasons. Number one, I find term limits and the suggestion of it, and by the way, I find it's just a minority number of voices in our community that regularly talk about it. I find it's one of the most insulting suggestions you could do, suggest in a democratic process. Let me tell you why. What you're telling voter A is that because they've been choosing the same candidate for many years, because they want to vote for that candidate, you want to remove that candidate's name from the ballot to supposedly provide them better choices, different choices, because they'll be making more intelligent, better decisions. I find that such an insult to the electorate who wants to decide whoever they want to have represent them, and no politician is invincible to begin with. As well, I find it odd that only in public life is experience shunned from time to time. Most people I know, if they want a plumber, if they want a tradesman, if they want a dentist, doctor, accountant, they want somebody with a reputation, results, and experience. It only seems in public life that we sometimes shun experience, and teneurism or seniority isn't appreciated. Thank you.
Donna.
And I understand your point there, Tom. Yes, seniority does have its value. But here's what a lot of people are talking about, what people see. I truly believe in term limits. And the reason for that is because we have seen at council, there's been numerous capital projects that have come to council table that have been put off and deferred for years. And it just seems like the councillors that are there, they just want to maintain their job. They don't want to rock the boat. They just want to make their little ward happy and get elected again. And they're not working in unison. And that is the problem. And that is why we need to have term limits. You need to bring in fresh ideas, fresh people to bring in progress in this city. And we haven't seen it for a number of years. Nothing's been progress.
Well,
So that's why I think term limits are absolutely imperative.
I respect your opinion, Donna. Obviously disagree with it. Obviously, you haven't been watching council, and the councils of the past are current for all the great things we've been doing economically in the city, especially getting through a worldwide pandemic that was unprecedented in our history, in our city's time. We have been working so well together, moving this agenda of our city forward. My goodness, Hamilton is suddenly like a destination place. It's like the world has discovered us in the last 10 years, and I'm very proud of that, and council deserves a lot of that. And lastly, I have found the most successful organizations or governments have a nice blend of veteran experience along with newcomers. Thank you.
Chris?
Thanks, Mike. Yeah, I just want to comment on Tom's point about being an incumbent. I think we have to admit, at least out loud, that there is a massive incumbency advantage in these municipal elections. Something like 90% of incumbent councillors win their re-elections. There's a lot of reasons for that. Resources being out in the public eye all the time. So I think that speaks to maybe Donna's point a bit about the reason for term limits would be a better idea. Also, experience is a double-edged sword. Some people don't like what you're doing for a long time, and that's why new blood is always a good thing. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Okay. No final thoughts. We will continue to move on. Question number 2 from Stefan Spolnick. Your question, who you would like to direct it to, please.
Sorry, I'm going to direct it to you again, Councillor Jackson. I apologize.
Just figured that.
Yeah. What do you think is the most pressing issue in Ward 6, and how can we resolve it?
I think the most pressing issue right now is getting the Mountain Brow Concession Reconstruction Project hopefully started next spring with the $7.5 million that I got approved through council. This would mimic and replicate the wonderful work I did with a 25-member citizen committee. To a couple of my challengers who say they don't know about any citizen committees, the East Mountain Citizens Group, led by Kate Fraser, has done a wonderful job. So from the Kenilworth Circle to Mohawk Road, the multi-use pathway, the first street in Hamilton with solar panels, talk about environmentally friendly, connected to the escarpment stairs. What we want to do from the Kenilworth Circle to Upper Gage now is replicate that. All the designs have been approved. I've had a couple of public meetings at Carmen's where a number of people, 100 turned out one meeting, 50 turned out to another. Very proud of that. I've got a very active citizens committee, and we'll hopefully get shovels in the ground and it'll expand the multi-use path. So the Parks Master Plan will be a continuum from Mohawk Road all the way over along Mountain Park Avenue to the hospital. To me, that's incredibly important because people want more healthy, active amenities in their community that they pay for. Thank you.
Anybody else like to speak to priorities to the ward at all? No? Okay. Oh, yeah, please. Yes, please.
Sorry, Tom, back to you. The Albion, is that included in what you're talking about? Albion Falls?
So, thank you, Dan.
You didn't just put in like 2 platforms there?
So, if I could, thank you, Dan. The Albion Falls, what Dan's referring to, about 15 years ago at $500,000, we built the 2 lookout platforms at that top parking lot where the heritage stone is for Albion Falls. However, given the popularity of the falls, I now have $2 million approved with still more community consultation to come, especially for the neighborhood of Albion Falls and Corinthian Drive abutting Albion Falls. I've got a task force set up of citizens, again, to a couple of my challengers who haven't heard about any of these citizens in Ward 6 because they haven't maybe been as involved as they could have been. I've got a citizens task force set up. We are now a beautiful design of a lookout platform starting at Mountain Brow Boulevard that will be a stairway platform, circling around to a cantilever right in front of the falls. It's going to be gorgeous, prestigious, and I'm hopefully looking forward to that next year, Dan. Thank you.
That's good. I'm just curious. So the falls, is there going to be access down to the bottom of the falls?
This platform and stairway, if it gets built and approved finally, but $2 million is set aside for it, we'll get you right down near the bottom of the falls. So wedding pictures, visitors to our great city will be able to enjoy one of the prestige locations right in the heart of Ward 6, Albion Falls.
Will it have wheelchair accessibility?
I'm sure that it will be accessible, and that's something I will make a note of, Dan, to take under advisement if it isn't. Thank you.
Yeah, Albion Falls has a huge history in my family. My grandfather is Clarence Preston. He was the detective on the Evelyn Dick murder case where they found John Dick. It's like when I drive by Albion Falls now, what I see is I see Hamilton is like home to waterfalls, right? That's what we boast about. But when you come up, there's barriers all around it. And then you drive up there and you have 2 bylaw officers. Every time I've gone by, they're basically sitting there on the bench. And probably that's what they're told to do. And I know they've given out like 600 fines. But you know what? Like in the advertisement for Hamilton, it says, oh, Hamilton, come to Hamilton, city of waterfalls, hurry up and get your fine. Like,
Tom, you've had a lot to say to this one. I did see Donna's hand up. Donna, you like to quickly respond to this?
My apologies.
So, yes, I'm talking about priorities, or we're talking about priorities. I want to talk about the priority of our seniors. So, I've been to 801 Upper Gage. They lost power, but there's so much more going on there, Tom. So, this building was built, if some of you don't know, in the 1970s. It's aluminum wiring. They've had fire after fire after fire. Those wires are being touched, and if you know, with aluminum wiring, it's safe as long as you don't touch it. But as soon as you start touching it, it becomes a fire hazard. I've been in the building. There's wires that are exposed. the doors that go out to the parking lot and to the side have been left open on numerous occasions. Mice are getting in. People have been coming into that building, doing their laundry in the laundry room that's for residents, and they don't live there. And I have been told that there's been numerous calls to your office to have these things corrected, and things are not getting done. And the $50 gift card that they were given, seniors are on fixed incomes, Tom. They had freezers full of food that they strategically purchased on sale. I was told the $50 won't even cover what was in their fridge. And then they were offered food to come down to the main lobby. How are they getting there, Tom? There's no elevators for them. There's people in wheelchairs, in walkers. It was not possible for them to get down to the main lobby for their free pizza.
Response from candidate Jackson.
Yes, thank you, Donna. What Donna has not told the public, unfortunately, was 10 years ago, I fought successfully to get $5 million to renovate 801 Upper Gauge, the Swansea. I'm very proud of that building. I consider it one of the flagship seniors buildings under City Housing Hamilton, which I'm a board member, always fighting for the complexes in our ward, along with 1100 Lime Ridge Road East. So we removed the asbestos 10 years ago. We did some structural work, roof replacement. The mechanical electrical at the time was determined by the professionals that it could continue on with regular monitoring. There have been issues, unfortunately, with power outages, and recent one a couple of months ago. I was there on site immediately. I've held a town hall meeting there this past summer as well. About 100 seniors turned out. I can tell you the management was there, and they have provided and will be providing like-for-like food replacement of the food that was lost. And a forensic audit is being done once and for all on all the electrical and mechanical system there. If it requires additional dollars, if I'm lucky enough to be back on council, I will fight for those monies along with security cameras.
Candidate Jackson, thank you very much for that. In order to get all the questions in, we will continue to move on with quick questions and brief debates. Donna, your question and candidate, please.
So it's for Tom. So, Tom, do you think it's important and valuable for our community members to bring their concerns to City Hall and Council?
I absolutely do, Donna. And I've never been one to cocoon myself in my office at City Hall. I've lived in Ward 6 since the early mid-'80s. I've lived in 6 different locations on the East Mountain. Last 15 years, by the way, my address is publicly known. Not sure about the rest, but it is publicly known. I live at 65 East 44th Street. Many a constituent has dropped off petitions, notes to me, chatted on my lawn with me. So I am accessible, available. I take a lot of pride in that, in having meetings wherever my constituents want me, individually for that cracked sidewalk or the city stop sign has been broken, or whether it's for the neighborhood or community. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that response. We will continue to move on. Candidate Sly, your question.
Do I get to respond?
Would you like to respond?
I
By all
really
means,
would.
Yes, please. Go right ahead. I didn't see your hand up.
Sorry, I thought that was just was going to happen. Okay, so I find it hard to believe, though, Tom, in September 2020, you went out of your way to praise Councillor Whitehead for his passion after he bullied and berated a community member for bringing community concerns to council. You did not offer an apology to those community members, but you absolutely praised Mr. Whitehead. In June of this year, you voted to maintain fees charged to Hamiltonians if they wish to submit a complaint against a councillor. You voted to keep that in place. It was overruled, but that's nevertheless. You made a statement regarding non-recording and camera meetings. You stated in 2013, and I quote, "To think that an individual could file a Freedom of Information request sends a chill up my spine." In March of 2020, you made another statement about the fear of Hamiltonians requesting information. You stated, and I quote, "You don't want to be handcuffed by what I say in camera."
Is there a further question to this, Donna?
Sorry.
Or is there a further question?
So I'm just saying how you're saying this. It seems like you say one thing but do another.
You know what, Don, I appreciate what you're bringing to the table, but let me tell you, if any of you are lucky enough to get elected, there are so many oversight bodies that govern members of council. information privacy officers, integrity commissioner's office. By the way, I was on the council during Mayor Eisenberger's first term that established one of the first integrity commissioner's offices in the province of Ontario. So very proud of that, not afraid at all of any scrutiny. We've got the ombudsman, we've got so many oversight bodies. One of the comments that Donna quoted that she doesn't say in its entirety was that I just felt that at some point in time, I just want to do my job that I'm elected to do from the people of the East Mountain, that overwhelmingly in the past I've been honored, given the privilege to represent them at City Hall. I just didn't want to be in a state of paralysis at times when there's so many oversight bodies. Not that I don't welcome them, but I just want to do my job. As far as Councillor Whitehead, in our democracy, folks, if you're watching, Donna talks about all her involvement in federal provincial politics. My goodness, in Parliament and at Queen's Park, they're much more raucous and boisterous and belligerent than you'll ever probably find at City Hall. In our democracy, different individuals from a wide spectrum of personalities tend to get elected. You need to ask those ridings or those districts why they elect them. I accepted, though, all the integrity commissioner's recommendations against Councillor Whitehead twice. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much. We will now move on. Candidate Chris Sly, your question, please.
Thank you very much. It's for Tom. I just want to preface this with I wanted to say thank you to Mr. Jackson for his many decades of service. Although we may not agree on every issue, it is a tough job to be in the public spotlight, as we've all seen tonight, and to put yourself and your family out there. So I just want to thank you for that.
Thank you.
My question is about housing. We have seen a decrease in the total number of public-owned units in the last 4 years. You said yourself you sit on the City Housing Board. What would you commit tonight to building more public-owned housing in the city and in Ward 6?
Chris, I know how strongly you believe in that, given your background that you bring to the table, that I'm somewhat familiar with. Let me say that what my challengers may not be aware of, sitting on the City Housing Hamilton Board, $15 million has been approved for building a 66-unit apartment building along Macassa Avenue between the little cluster of Macassa apartments that are there for seniors, the low two-story buildings that I've been in many times, and between that and Macassa Lodge, there's a swath of open area there. It's been approved $15 million building for 66 units, 80% of which will be for subsidized units for seniors. Consultations underway. Public meetings have been held for the existing seniors at 68 to 92 Macassa Avenue, so they know what is forthcoming, along with the wonderful expansion approved for Macassa Lodge of the D wing that will be demolished with increased number of beds there. Right now, City Housing Hamilton and Macassa Lodge are coordinating both projects, but I'm very proud of that $15 million approval, Chris, for more seniors housing. Thank you.
Response or follow-up?
Yeah, just a quick note. That is a wonderful project, and I'm happy to hear that. But that doesn't even get us to where we were 4 years ago. So I'm hopeful that you will champion affordable housing, and you will champion more public housing being built in the future if you were to be elected again. That is certainly something that is dear to my heart. Thank you.
Anybody else like to join this
Yeah,
conversation?
I just
Yes,
agree.
please, Donna,
There's-
and then we'll go to candidate Preston.
Sorry, there's a 240, I believe it's 240 less affordable housing than there was 4 years ago, and that's a concern. We're going backwards instead of forwards. Thank you.
Candidate Preston?
Yes. My question is, Tom, okay, so we have this money, it's the government's money, right? Okay, what about the developers? The developers that ask for millions of dollars for homes these days. Is it in the plan to set up multi-level housing or co-op housing, coexisting housing for these new developments that we're going to experience? And I think it's Ward 14. I can't remember the ward, but while moving forward, the real estate developers I think they get away with a lot. I think that they with their plan they should have. It can't be all downtown. It can't be, I hear Bob Bertina talking about, well, I hope we have cheaper housing along the LRT. It's got to be spread out throughout the city.
Well, Dan, I'm very concerned, especially with the LRT corridor. Even those that are champions of the LRT on council, I'm very concerned about potential displacement of affordable geared to income subsidized units along that corridor that will only potentially bring more high-end condominiums. Very concerned for that. When public land is involved, we can put in stipulations of percentages for affordable housing, but if it's strictly a private development on private land, that's up to the private developer and what they intend to submit as plans to City Hall. Thank you.
Well, I think it should be part of the arrangements for the developers, and it's part of their commitment to Hamilton. It's not all about everybody downtown and we have encampments here. We have to work together as a team. It can't be just government money. It has to be the developers. They have to do their part. They're using our roads to get to. They're using our bus system to get there. They're using everything. Everybody's paying taxes. It can't be just government paying everything.
So if I could just wrap up with that, please, Dan. Roxborough is going to be an exciting new project of subsidized and market units, couple of hundred. It's going to be a fantastic potential model of a private-public partnership. Private partners that came in with money, got City of Housing Hamilton's approval, the ward councillor of the day's approval, and that could be a model to what you're getting at, where private development can merge with public dollars to create affordable housing.
Final
Thank
comment
you.
will go to Chris Sly.
Thank you very much. I truly believe that if people want to build on private property, they want to build their units, they are submitting these proposals to City Hall. It is up to us, to the council, to make sure that it is beneficial to the people that live here, and that is part of that is having them have commitments for affordable units in those buildings going forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. Councillor Candidate Jackson, it is your chance to ask a question to one of your candidates.
Finally?
Finally.
Thank you, Moderator Fortune. I want to say that through the pandemic in this term of council, I've heard some negativity from 2 or 3 of my challengers, and that's their prerogative, but I want to speak to positives. And I want to say that through the pandemic, one of the worst worldwide plagues that came upon us, and thank God, overall, we survived it. I want to give tremendous credit to our Emergency Operations Center, led by Dr. Richardson, former General Manager Paul Johnson, and current General Manager Jason Thorne. A lot of us have suddenly forgotten about the horrendous 2 years that our community went through. We lost under 1,000 lives, every life valuable, important, and I'm saddened of what we lost. But in a city of 550,000, I thought overall we came through it fairly well. My point being on the economic side, which I'd like to ask of Chris, $1 billion, again, of building permits. We succeeded and exceeded for the 10th year out of 11 years. The Amazons are here with 1,500 good-paying jobs. Sierra Foods, I was at the ribbon cutting up in our Ward 6 on Glover's Road recently. Corbeck Steel up on Nebo and 20 Road. The West Harbor, where 1,600 new residential units are going to be built.
Is there a question, Mr.
Yes,
Jackson?
my question to Chris Sly is that what does he think about the overall economic development activity, achievements, and what would he do? Thank you.
Thank you very much for the question, Tom. As you know, I'm a small business owner, so the effects of the pandemic, I felt them very dear and close to home. There were some early days there that lots of tears and wondering if we're going to make it through. And like a lot of other small business owners, it took a lot of courage and a lot of people chipping in, and a lot of amazing local support from people that live in different cities. If we are building a city that is great to live in, has affordable housing, and people are well taken care of, businesses will want to come to Hamilton, plain and simple. Small businesses could use more help. They're often competing with large box stores and multinational corporations for the same spaces. In my opinion, we need rent controls on commercial spaces. I have heard so many stories over the pandemic of small businesses closing, not because they're not viable businesses, but because they're being squeezed out by greedy landlords, just increasing the rent, sometimes by like $1,000, $2,000, just like that. And the pandemic proved that people want to support local. But all levels of government need to look at how we can change the rules to better economically support the development of these local businesses. Thank you.
You get 20 seconds to respond.
I want to finish on an even happier positive note that I agree with candidate Chris Sly. As a former small business owner, I used to own 2 Second Cup stores. I understand bottom line, employing people, and I couldn't agree more with Chris. And every move we made during the pandemic was to revitalize the small business industry. Thank you.
That wraps up our Ward 6 debate. Unfortunately, our time with our candidates has run out. Once again, they are Tom Jackson, Dan Preston, Donna Padu, Stefan Spolnick, and Chris Sly. And of course, with the end of our Ward 6 debate, remember, it's our Hamilton and it's our vote. And Election Day is October the 24th, and you can find everything you need to know, including a list of all the candidates running for City Council, as well as public and Catholic school boards on the City of Hamilton website at hamilton.ca/elections. Please, I can't stress this enough, Hamilton, get out and vote, whether in person or by mail-in ballot. Then, join us that evening for all your local election results. A reminder that you can find a complete schedule of all of our upcoming election debates on our website at cable14.com/elections. And please make note to join us on Tuesday, September the 27th, beginning at 7 p.m. for the live mayoral debate. I'm Mike Fortune. Thanks for joining us, Hamilton. Get your phones out, Hamilton. Scan the QR code on your screen to take you directly to cable14.com, where you can find out about our shows, see our TV schedule, learn about our hosts, and so much more.